Hi guys, welcome to YouTube Live with Brew York. I'm Wayne Smith and
I am Lee, production director. Wayne is the MD of the business. So we're the two founders of Brew York.
So
we've done that at the top because we always forget to intro ourselves. We assume you all know by now, forgetting that every time we've got some new subscribers. So yeah, Wayne, Lee.
And don't worry, every time we meet people for the first time, everyone gets it wrong. So it doesn't matter which name you use, we'll answer to both. So
sorry, we sometimes get called the two Bruces. We've not said that one in a while, have we?
I think we did it last
Bruce
year,
Wayne and Bruce Lee.
So anyway, this is we'll move on from the dad jokes and we'll crack on with the actual live tasting. So this is actually our coming of age show. Apparently, it's our 18th live stream since we started these. Getting old now, aren't we?
Hey.
So we'd like to welcome all our subscribers and all our new subscribers and existing subscribers. We really appreciate everyone joining in, the questions we get. Just make this really enjoyable for ourselves and hopefully for you guys as well. We've got a live audience this time, so this is great again to have a live audience. This is probably our biggest audience yet. Now that the more and more people have had their jabs, and we feel a bit. Each time we do this, we feel a bit safer, and we feel like we can invite more people in. So we've got our biggest audience for I think since our Christmas show last year. So that's great as well. So hopefully the audience can all hear us tonight, and you guys at home can hear us. So big warning or bit of advice. Please take the salted caramel Tonkoko out of the fridge. It's going to taste so much better when it's a little bit warmer, and if we waffle as much as we normally do, in about 2 hours' time, you might get to drink it. But in reality, it should be about 90 minutes. So 30 minutes per beer. We should be on to the 12%. 8:30 p.m. is a great time for that. So first beer up is Matthew McConaughaze. Any big Brew York fans or people who've drank our beer for a while have probably tasted this beer before. Hopefully, Lee will tell you a little bit more about it shortly. Well, possibly me. I'll see what comes on the next page. So who's talking about this beer? But yeah, pour your first beer, and then we'll tell you a little bit about what's coming up today.
Yeah, so as Wayne has said there, we've got a live audience again here. So this is a thing we plan to do every time now. So if you want to be part of a future audience, you can contact us on info@brewyork.co.uk. There's no ticket fee. You just need to come along and enjoy the show. We lay on the samples. You get to drink along with us, just as you're doing at home.
And Lee will sign an autograph for you if you ask nicely. I won't.
Yeah. Sorry. Yeah, they keep calling me YouTube star Lee Graham.
It's his Twitter handle now.
Because we get like 350 viewers for each thing. But anyway, so as always, we're going to be doing 4 beers tonight. As Werner said, the first one is going to be Matthew McConaughaze, so that's a 6.2% DDH pale. More detail on that coming soon. Werner's going to cover that one off. We're then going to follow that with a beer that I'm very excited about, a beer called Red Danson, which is a three-way collab between ourselves, Elusive Brewing, and the Opinions podcast. And I believe Steve of the Opinions podcast is watching tonight. So a shout out to Steve. How you doing, mate?
So, why is Martin not joining?
Well, maybe Martin is, but only Steve contacted me. He said if I needed any technical advice on how the beer went, that I would be able to contact him, given that he got involved with the brew on the day and I did not.
A little elbow dig.
Yeah, a little, yeah. So then the third beer up is another one that we're super excited about, which is Jackie Flan. So last month in your pack, you had a beer called...
Jackie Flan Maple.
I was getting...
Oh, sorry.
So last month in your pack, you had a beer called Jackie Flan, which was the most expensive beer we'd ever made, until this month, because then we decided to add another ingredient, and we've added maple to it, so now we've got a new most expensive beer that we've ever made. So we've got Jackie Flan Maple Edition as the third beer up, coming in at 7.5%. And then we are concluding with the mighty 12% salted caramel Tonkoko. So Tonkoko, you'll know, is a big series of beers that we do, always founded on coconut, coconut, cacao, tonka, and vanilla. And we've done a whole host of iterations. And this is the first time we put caramel in, and we've gone with a salted caramel. And for me, this is the best iteration since we did Imperial about 3 years ago.
Yeah, January, I want to guess, but I think it was 2018. I think January 2018 we launched it. Empress Tonka. Oh, Imperial.
Imperial, yeah, which was launched at Leeds. But more on that coming up later. So we think once again we've got you a really strong box out there. You've got an experimental beer that we'll be talking about in a bit, which is a recipe adaptation, hoping that we might change one of the core range. You've also got Live and Let Pie. That was very close to being included in this tasting. It's rating really well. Everyone that's rated on Untapped so far is really enjoying that beer. A banoffee pie milk stout. So almost made it in. And the time traveling taxi trial recipe I've already covered. So right at the top, Wayne did say the more interactive we can make this, the better. So we need the questions from in the room. We need the questions from online. If you are online watching on YouTube, the way to get your questions in is to type them below the video. Addy and Ant to our right over here will then...
Or Nant for sure.
Nant, yeah. They will copy those down, and our little hand of questions has gone missing. So we'll be getting this big hand of questions coming in instead. So they'll get passed in. And people in the audience will likewise be writing down questions, passing them to the front, and we'll cover off as many of those through this session as we can. Also, as we go along, we will be doing certain specialist subjects. So we're going to talk about the experimental series of beers that we're doing again. We're going to give you a full rundown on what the Christmas beers are this year, when you can expect to receive them, and when we are going to be doing a dedicated YouTube tasting. Although, did we agree the date?
No.
Right. Well, you've got between now and when we actually announce that bit to work out what date it's going to be then. Okay.
It'll be fun though, and the only requirement is if anyone wants to join us for the tasting, you do have to wear Christmas jumpers in October. That'll be mint.
And then other things we'll obviously be covering is what beers you can expect in your pack next time, what will be the YouTube for next time round. So, Ant?
Without further ado, Ant. No one will notice.
Yeah. But behind the wizard's curtain, yeah, we do have some prompts down here.
So, yeah.
So, anyway, over to you, Wayne. Matthew McConaughaze.
So, yeah, I'm talking about Matthew McConaughey, apparently, so I thought it was Lee, but... Yeah, exactly. So, it's, well, DDH Pale Ale, we mentioned that earlier, but one of the things that we like to do, which hopefully you guys have noticed, is we like to do the celebrity puns. It started off with just general puns. We've gone down a few routes since then, but when we got the Graham Norton passing out a can of Dame Judy Quench on his show, and Matthew McConaughey had a drink of it and enjoyed it, we thought we're going to have to bring this beer out and hope that he gets back on the Graham Norton show so we can send some samples and hopefully get him to drink that. It hasn't happened yet. He hasn't been that active. He hasn't done that many films since COVID hit for some reason. So so we'll have to keep trying. But it's we brought it out just before lockdown. The first version it was, wasn't it? It was just before. It wasn't just before. It was during lockdown.
It was during lockdown. It was maybe something like 14, 15 months ago, I think, the first version.
And it was a beer we all loved in the brewery. It's a style we really like. DDH is double dry hopped. So double dry hopped pale ale. What that means is we brew the beer as normal, we ferment the beer, we add hops into the fermenter to try and get that flavour and aroma that we really like with American style pale ales. Ferment it as normal, and then we drop those hops out and we do the same thing again. So we basically lose a lot of beer during the process, but hopefully in the end beer you get a lot of taste, a lot of flavour and a lot of aroma coming through. So a DDH beer is a great way to get super intense flavour and aroma, but unfortunately we lose a lot of beer when we do that. But it's worth it, hopefully you guys appreciate the final product. So this time round we changed the hop bill up a little bit. So each year, the more we work with our hop merchants, the better access we get to pretty interesting hops. And one of the things that we found over the last 12 months in particular, we've used a certain hop quite a lot. And we basically started off, this is one of the first beers we used it in. So Sabro is quite a popular hop at the moment. So we used that in this beer, but we used slightly less of it. And then we now included something called Idaho 7. Lee's got an interesting story on this, and if you've ever tuned in to our previous YouTube lives, you might have heard this, but go on, for the audience, tell them why they call it Idaho 7.
Brilliant. It's really, really not that interesting. So it's from Idaho, and it came from the 7th row in the field. There we go.
Yeah, the hop merchants told us a story, and we were being polite, and we were like, wow, it's really interesting, and it seems to have cropped up about 10 times since then.
At least I covered that off a lot more quickly this time.
Well, exactly, the eighth best one. And in addition to that, we used Equinox. So pretty interesting hop bill. It's not got the big hops in that we that people know and like were popular maybe 2-3 years ago, which we use a lot still. But Citra, Mosaic, those type of hops we use a lot of, but not in this beer. This is quite different. And then what makes this beer more different to last year is the not necessarily the hops that we've used, but we used a completely different yeast strain. So typically, in most of our pale beers, we use a similar yeast. It's an American style designed for pale ales, but a pretty cool yeast that's been around for quite a while that we've wanted to use more and more of is called Conan. It's quite not as easy for us to get hold of as some of the other hops yeast we use. So this one's actually strains called Barbarian for a
Conan the Barbarian.
So they've obviously good at puns as well.
So, I'll just elaborate on that a little bit if I may. So Conan is the yeast strain from the Alchemist, and the Alchemist are known as kind of the grandfathers of the East Coast IPA movement. They did the first kind of real hazy juice bombs, heady topper, focal banger. These things are the first things that kind of drove everybody into having lower bitterness, hazy beers, things that are more like breakfast juice. So that yeast strain actually originally comes from London. So someone had taken that yeast strain over to the US, domesticated it out there, and then they'd worked out that it does leave a bit of haze in the beer, but at the same time it also contributes these real nice fruity esters that complement the hop character. So yeah, this yeast originally has its roots in the UK and is now back in the UK for us to make an American style of beer.
So when I mentioned the origins of the name or where the DDH comes from, the double dry hopping. So we use a lot of hops that are called cryo hops now, and I won't bore you with the detail, but Lee probably will in a second. But cryo hops is a different way of trying to maximise the aroma, the volatile parts of the hops that we usually, what we used to do in brewing was we used to use more and more hops, and this was basically a much more effective way of getting the best out of the hops and getting the bits we really want to target and utilise in a much simpler, easily accessible format. So we use these things called cryo hops, and then we dry hop with the cryo hops partway through the fermentation of the beer. So while there's still a lot going on, there's still a lot of yeast in suspension, transferring the sugars into alcohol. We add the hops, they basically stay in suspension during fermentation, and they leave a lot of flavour and aroma and also a hazy finish to the beer. So
if we want to get really sciencey on that, certain types of yeast, like this type of yeast, has the ability to do something that they call biotransformation. And biotransformation is when something organic has the ability to change one chemical compound into another form of chemical compound. So in this context, in a beer, it's taking a compound that might not necessarily be fruity, and then the yeast converts it into something that is fruity. So you're getting this extra kind of juicy, fruity character into the beer because of how the yeast is adapting the compounds within the hops. And to just do a little bit of further science on what cryo hops are. So cryo obviously refers to the use of liquid nitrogen. So, you know, like Walt Disney is cryogenically frozen. So cryo is, the use of liquid nitrogen. And they freeze the hop flower. And in doing so, it allows them to separate the bract, which is the like vegetable type matter, from the lupulin, which is the flavour and oil and resin containing component of the hop. So in doing so, they kind of reduce its weight by half, and you end up with this like concentrated form of what you're trying to get out of the hop anyway. So it then means it absorbs less of the beer, so we get more beer. And the flavour is a little bit different because obviously that vegetable component is also contributing something to the beer. So in my opinion, to use cryo hops alone leads to a fairly one-dimensional beer. I think it's evident, it feels a little bit narrow in terms of its flavour profile. So our preference is to use them in unison with the more traditional type of pelletized hop, which is called a T90. So you use a little bit of that, so you're still getting that kind of vegetable background that you're familiar with. And then we use the cryos to really kind of deliver the top notes, the real like strong flavour characteristics.
We had an interesting conversation. Well, interesting for us. It might not be for you guys, but hopefully it is. An interesting conversation with someone in the brewing industry recently. We were talking about UK hops in particular, and how the technology and the access to equipment and in the UK is quite different to what they have in America. So. The American hop market is much bigger than the UK market. Well, one, because the actual size of the country versus the size of our country and the amount of space you need to harvest hops. But they've got technology that like what they use for cryo hops, which is way more advanced than what we use in this country for our hop programs. So sometimes, you know, we're very much focused on American hops. Sometimes you think that what they're doing is a lot better than what we can do in the UK. In reality, we probably can do some really interesting stuff in the UK. We just don't necessarily have the same technology as they're using. And one of our new brewers who stood at the back of the room today, you might want to come on camera later on, has got a bit of a passion for UK hops, and he's been telling myself and Lee about some of the really interesting ones on the market. And we might be able to see how these type of hops compare to American hops at some point in the...
So the main UK hop merchant is a company called Charles Farham, and Josh, to who Wayne is referring, has recently been on their annual hop walk. So every sort of September, October time when they begin to do their harvest, any of their customers are invited to walk around the farm and see how the harvesting goes. And it's an experience that if you have the opportunity to do, you should do at least once. It's amazing to see how the fields grow, how they take them down, and then how they kind of hook them onto the machinery, and then it goes up and it separates the little flowers from all of the other material. So it's a really cool thing. And what's come out of that is there's this new hop that's coming to market called Harlequin, and Josh is doing his damned hardest to convince me to, for the very first time ever, make a Brew York beer using an English hop.
There could be some really cool puns we could do on that, though. I'm just thinking straight away, Suicide Squad. That's Sean Connery, Suicide Squad. But yeah, that's very getting a little bit geeky on hops. I'll hand across to Lee to talk a little bit about our special project in the box this month. Or questions.
So I'm going to answer this question. So I've been really disparaging about English hops in the past, so I've just been stitched up with this question. Would you ever make beer with traditional British hops like Fuggles or Goldings? 5 Points Best is a good example of them done well. Yeah, the short answer is no. The longer answer is fuck never. So we have a friend called Gaz, and so when I first started out, there used to be another brewery within the York City walls called York Brewery, and they had a homebrew club. And we used to go along and we got to meet lots of other people, and one of the people we met there was Gaz. He now runs the homebrew club that is hosted here, and he grows his own Fuggles. And he puts it in everything. And he makes me drink everything. And I hate Fuggles.
Hi, Gaz.
Hi, Gaz, if you want. It's no secret. He knows I absolutely detest them, and I think he likes seeing my misery.
It is an interesting one, though, because lots of people's taste in hops obviously differs. There's usually a general consensus that certain hops taste better than others. But one of the things that, there's probably more people in the UK who like Fuggles and Goldings than there are who like Citra Mosaic, because there's probably more people drinking traditional bitters than well, maybe not anymore, but there was at one point. But people's tastes massively differ, and one of the divisive hops that we used to use in one of our core beers, Sriracha's, has a really distinctive dill-like character, which is
creamy dill, just what you want in a beer.
I love it.
But I also think Sabro has essences of this hop, and you love Sabro, and I don't really like Sabro.
Because Sabro's not dill. Sabro is a Marmite hop, you're right there, but it's got this kind of almost like fake, like pineapple chunk crossed with like coconut thing going on. Which I really quite like.
Well, I like certain aspects of the flavour, but every time when the guys came with the recipe for this year's Matthew McConaughaze, and the brewers were all like, "Oh, I'm loving this version," and I tasted it, I was like, "You guys have put Sabro in it, haven't you?" And they're like, "Well, we used it last year." I was like, "Oh, just hoping we'd have moved it." But that's some personal preference. Sabro is so popular at the moment that I can understand why we use it.
But it's it's about how you use them as well. So if we were to lead out with Sabro and make it a Sabro dominant beer, at least 50% of our audience would detest that beer. But you can use it as a kind of a more minor accent. So what seems to be quite common now is people are using Sabro up to kind of 20% of the hop content. So you're not getting that dominant, like really big, intrusive flavour coming through. You're just getting the little accent at the back.
And it's obviously not that much of a turn off for me because I'm not exactly struggling drinking this bit.
Absolutely.
But yeah, it's one of those things. It's there's lots of hops that people really love. There's lots of hops that people don't like. And for us as brewers and breweries, it's about trying to get the right balance and having the right hops available for you guys to drink. And hopefully you'll see flavour profiles you like. And
the British hop scene has evolved to be very, very different to the US hop scene. And that's not necessarily a bad thing. As Wayne said, those beers are popular. These hops are exported in huge quantities across to the US because there's this wonderful reciprocal arrangement between ourselves and the US where they simply love everything that we do and we kind of love everything that they do. So they make English bitters over there and we make like West and East Coast IPAs over here. But the way in which the kind of breeding programs in the UK have gone is they've always gone down this kind of like earthy kind of neutral kind of character to the hops, and if they ever presented anything like an American type characteristic to them, they deselected against them. They did not breed them. So now you've got all these hops coming around like Harlequin and Jester and Ernest and so forth in the UK, which are ones that they bred in the 1970s and went, put it in the bin, it's too American. And now they decided that's what people want, so now they're bringing all these hops back that they dismissed in the 1970s.
And the irony is most of the hops that we use a lot of that were bred in America, their parentage is from UK hops. So they've taken these hops, they've basically bred them, and they've grown them in a different climate, different habitat, and they've managed to develop flavours that we absolutely love. So anyway, we are getting proper geeky on our first bit talking about hops, so let's keep the content a bit more interesting.
I could start doing the terroir thing, but that would be a little rabbit hole we might not get back out of. So next thing we have to tell you is a little bit of a hands-up confession. So it has come to our awareness that one of the beers in your pack may be showing some signs of oxidation. It is not universal across this beer. We've only seen it in one or two when we've done some internal testing ourselves. But rather than you coming across that yourselves and getting annoyed with us, we just wanted to put our hands up and say, we think there is one beer in there. Unfortunately, it's the new trial recipe of time traveling that we were making a big deal of. So we are hugely frustrated and in fact embarrassed by the fact that this has happened. So we do hope it's only going to affect a handful of you. But yeah, please accept our apologies. We will do better next time. So what we've been trying to do with this experimental series is to do one of two things, either to bring out a beer where it's a little bit too bold to immediately put onto the big kit. So we want to use you guys as the guinea pigs, if I'm blunt. We want to hear your feedback, what you think about the beer. Does it hit the flavour profile we intend it to? Does it have the right body? Does it have the right appearance? And so forth. So one thing we might be trying to do is just something completely new that we're not quite bold enough to do on the big kit yet. And you're going to help us refine that recipe. The other thing we'll be looking to do through this is what we've tried to do this month is we've presented you with two versions of one beer, and we want your feedback on the new version of that beer. So in your box you have 2 cans of Time Travelling Taxi. One of them says new recipe on the bottom.
Even
so
more obvious.
We've not tried to disguise what it is.
Well, unfortunately, what we actually wanted to put them out in the same cans, but unfortunately we put some of them out in the brand new fully printed cans, some of them out in the sleeved cans. So we made a little bit of a boo-boo there as well. So yeah, it's even more obvious than it should be. But just for people who don't know what we mean, so when Lee said that some of them are showing signs of oxidization. So beer doesn't mix well with oxygen. As soon as beer mixes with oxygen, it starts to miscolour, it starts to lose its flavour, it starts to go off. And typically, if we canned a beer The lid, we've got a can specialist sat to our side, but we won't bring him on camera just yet. But the lid basically falls on. It comes without the lid on. We fill the beer into the can. Sorry, we purge the can with carbon dioxide, which pushes all the oxygen out. We fill the can with beer, and then we leave some foam, so basically some head on top of the pint, and then we drop the lid on. We seam the lid and we seal it, and then we basically send it out to you guys. So every now and then, something can go wrong where maybe there wasn't enough foam created on top of the pint, maybe the purge when we filled it through the CO2 didn't quite go right. But there's all sorts of reasons why sometimes we get too much oxygen in the can. And if you drink that beer within the first few weeks, you won't be able to tell. It will start discolouring and things will start going wrong, but as long as you drink the beer, it won't make you ill. But that's the first thing we need to make clear. It won't make you ill, but it starts discolouring the beer, especially if we use the modern yeast and hops that we try to use. So things will start looking worse than they actually should, as opposed to tasting worse. But if you're going to keep the beer in can for 2 to 3 months, it's definitely going to spoil. So we only canned this beer 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
So it's super fresh still. So it might have started to discolour. We didn't want that.
And it's not a massive discoloration. It's not going to be a massive flavour turned. Our standards now are just very high, and it's not to the level we would wish it to be to.
And we only did 500 cans of this beer for you guys for part of this experiment. So we don't want you guys to drink something you don't want to drink. So if you've got a can and you pour it and you're not happy with it, please contact us. But we're hoping that we'll be able to do the experiment still. You'll be able to taste the beer side by side, make notes, let us know what you think works, what doesn't work, and hopefully the colour isn't off-putting. But yeah, if you do have problems with it, you're not happy with it, please let us know and drop us the email to info@brewyork.co.uk and we'll sort it out for you.
And the astute of you may notice that this month's experimental beer was not the one we talked about introducing last month. So that beer, unfortunately, did not hit our standards. We decided not to release that. So you will have an alternative option for next month and the further months going forward.
So yeah, one of the things that we try to do is try to constantly improve things, try to make sure the beer that we put out is the best we can. And especially given my previous background as a finance director of business, which I guess I am again, I don't like us to pour money down the drain, but what I certainly don't like is you guys drinking beer that doesn't represent what we try to aspire to achieve. So if we ever find an issue with the beer, we will do our best to make sure it doesn't reach your mouths. So yeah, unfortunately, the beer that we wanted you guys to help us name didn't meet those standards, and we had to pour it down the drain. And that's a huge cost to us as a brewery. This, especially now we're on a new site, this was 5,000 litres of beer. So almost 10,000 pints of beer that had to go down the drain, which is horrible for us to do. But at the same time, it's better to do that than you guys to taste it and think, well, that doesn't taste like a Brew York beer. I'm not happy with that. So we will keep trying, and we're doing lots of things to improve our standards to make sure those things don't make it to you. And it's really frustrating for us that the replacement beer we put in isn't quite to our standards either. Which is why, yeah, we wanted to let you guys know about it, so you didn't discover
ignoring all of that, we're now going to tell you what we were trying to do with this beer. So if you have your little brochure booklet with you, you'll see there's a section in the back of the book where it talks about how we've done some internal tasting panel sessions, and we've assessed Time Travelling Taxi. And had a look, are we happy with the level of bitterness within it? Does the body feel right? Is it too thin? Is it too thick? How are the flavours of the hops coming through? So we did all of this and we decided the body was too thin. The beer wasn't creamy enough. It was too dry. There was 2 hops in it which didn't seem to have the right kind of balance. We have laurel in there which can leave a beer kind of dry and very floral. And we had citra in there which obviously contributes citrus. But what we felt was the citra wasn't coming through strongly enough and the laurel was coming through too strongly. So the beer was dry in a beer that really the style should finish that little bit sweeter. So we played around with the kind of percentages of these hops. We played around with the grain bill to make the body come up and to also encourage the level of sweetness to come up a bit. And we used a new yeast in this one as well, more of a haze specialist yeast. Which one was this? Was this juice?
This was also
Was this
Conan.
also Conan? So we used Conan in this one as well.
So,
Okay.
yeah, hopefully you guys, it won't be too obvious. Hopefully it's not too obvious when you do this side-by-side tasting and you can see some of the things we're trying to bring through. Maybe some of you guys will appreciate the original and you preferred the original. This is just our personal taste panel that we think that this would work. I'm still drinking the original Time Traveling Taxi as my side beer, so I like it. I don't know how it compares to the new one. We'll do a similar taste panel once we're ready for that. But you guys give us your feedback, and like I say, if there is any specific cans where it's affected, if you guys let us know, we'll do what we can to sort that out for you.
So now we're going to handle a few questions. So I've just been asked, what sort of flavours does the Sabo hop mainly add? So if you read the flavour descriptors, the two main things it's going to say is pineapple and coconut, and I think that is absolutely on the money. For me, it's not like a natural pineapple flavour, it's more like the pineapple chunk flavour you kind of have. That's kind of what I get from it.
As in the sweets, or as in the tins of...
No, the little like cube thing, like cola cubes with pineapple, those things. That's the kind of character I get coming through it.
So I've got one from Matthew. It says, do you have any more single hop series planned to showcase certain hops? Survivor Series was fantastic and absolutely loved the theme.
No plans at the minute, but every year our hop supplier provides us with certain experimental hops. They're usually called HBC number, real sexy names. So the only way we can truly learn the characteristics of those types of hops is to brew with them alone and see what they do. So you're probably not going to see anything more this year, but next year when we have our new supply coming in, yeah, I'd say there's a decent chance of some single hop stuff coming out then.
So I've got one, it doesn't say who wrote it, but have you ever heard about using beer for a hair or beard treatments? What would you use? A new product range?
I think beer and hair goes back quite a while, doesn't it? I think people have done that for years and years.
Spilt their beer, like spray it.
I mean, it depends on the beer, I guess. I don't think I'll be wanting to put a sticky stout in my hair, but I think a more of a traditional beer, a bitter, I think I've heard of that being used in your hair. So it's not a thing I would personally do. I mean, they have these things called shampoo and conditioner these days. I'm more of a fan of those, to be honest.
Put citra in, crumble the citra hops in some beard oil. Get proper hipster.
So Ant off camera is talking about how he likes to crumble citra hops in his beard oil because he's a real hipster and he bashes it off his elbow while he does it.
And then he goes cruising around Shoreditch.
So we've actually had a can each and a little bit on this side, so it might be worth us pouring the next beer while we take the next question. So next beer for anyone at home and in the audience, which I'm going to remember to do for the first time, is Red Danson.
Right, so while that comes along, we've got one more question. The summer beer festivals are now over. Which beer or beers did you really enjoy and have inspired you to create something similar yourselves? And that's from Dave.
It's a really interesting one because it's because it had been 18 months since we got to a beer festival and we were locked at home and doing this thing that I found that every time I went to a beer festival I was just more focused on catching up with the other brewers and having a chat and genuinely just it'd been so long just catching up with them, so I wasn't really paying attention to what I was drinking. I just asked them for something sessionable, and inevitably someone would pour me a 8% to 10% stout in a pint. I'm like, oh, brilliant. And yeah, it was, but it was more about just basically catching up with people again and just getting that interaction going. And I didn't really focus too much on new beers. To be honest with you, there was amazing beers out there, but we weren't really. Typically, I'd be talking to breweries and drinking their mainstay range. So I was often propping up the Thornbridge bar drinking Chai Pur, which I can get here in York.
This is very much first world problems.
Yeah.
Once you kind of know everybody in the scene, you do go to each other's bars, and then you'll say, "Just give me a sip of that." And they think they're doing you a favour, and they give you a bloody pint of it.
Yeah.
And you're like, well, I wanted to try something else. So then you've got to see that off, so then you can try something else. And you get stuck in this vicious circle. and before you know it, someone's ringing you a taxi because you need to go.
Yeah, or taking you on the train.
Taking me to the train.
But yeah, if I very much doubt he will be, but if Salty Johnny's watching now, I went to have a chat with the guys from Salt Brewery, and Johnny, who we've known for a long time, he's a real nice guy, and I was just like, have you got something sessionable? And I left him a pint glass, and I nipped to the toilet. I came back, and he'd cracked open a can of their newly launched salted caramel stout, and it was the same day we just launched salted caramel Tonkoko, and I was like, I didn't really want to drink a salted caramel stout. I didn't really want to drink our own. I was just wanting a sessionable beer, and he gave me pretty much a pint of this, and I was like, oh my God. It was about, I don't know, 5 o'clock in the afternoon. I was like, oh, thanks, mate. I genuinely appreciated the fact he wanted to show me this beer, but I was just like, oh God, it's too early for this.
Right, and now we should try and answer the question.
Yeah.
So I think, I can't remember specific beer names, to be honest, because all these sessions blend into one another. But I remember being impressed by Overtone's beers at Brew LDN.
I was going to say Brew LDN. There were some really cool sours we were getting.
I'm going to have to ask Nadia off camera, who was the sour producer that were raising the bar that I really liked? Pastor. Pastor sours. I really like those.
So we both said it in synchronization, so hopefully you heard it back home. But yeah, a brewery called Pastor Brewery. They got shortlisted for the Raise the Bar competition, which is We Are Beer, which is London Craft Beer Festival, Manchester Craft Beer Festival, Birmingham something. It's not called that. And Edinburgh Craft Beer Festival.
Beer Central.
They poured their beers at each of those festivals, and they did some cracking sour beers. And, really good what they were doing.
Neon Raptors game was strong again.
Lakes, yeah, Lakes, which is the newly formed brewery from a lot of the ex-members of Hawkshead.
Yeah, got a nice West Coast in the range, which obviously I'm a big fan of.
And Pomona, the double IPA that they did the collab with Lervig.
Ah, yeah.
That was really cool. So,
right. Okay. So on to
there's
the
plenty
next
more.
beer.
There was plenty more, but we were just a little bit drunk when we drank them.
Right. I would pour yours for you, but you've slacked.
That's actually time traveling taxis. Yeah.
So here we have Red IPA, which is a little bit vain to say this, but I think it's one of the best branded beers that we've done. It's got some really attractive fellas on it.
And if anyone wants you to sign your can, he'll do it afterwards.
So yeah, this is Red Danson. So obviously a play on Ted Danson, hence the artwork is a little bit like Cheers.
Nadia, who's Ted Danson?
I don't know.
So Ted Danson, yeah, of Cheers fame. Here he is in his Chicago bar, serving myself and Wayne, Andy from Elusive Brewing in Reading, and Stephen Martin from the Opinions podcast.
Sorry, super early this time.
That's like beer one. So I've been a listener to the Opinions podcast for as long as it's been going, which I think is approaching 5.5 years now, I believe.
It was 5 years. The birthday was for 5 years.
All right, so 5 and a bit years. Yeah, okay. Sorry, apologies, Stephen Martin. I was close. So I've been an avid listener to that for years, throughout my home brewing days and now into my commercial brewing days. It's where I get my fortnightly fix of what's going on in the industry. So I've kind of loved these guys from afar for some time. So over the course of the last few years, we've sent some beers in. They've given us some really good reviews through their podcast. So we kind of got to know each other through doing this. And then through different avenues, we got to know Andy at Elusive. And I think it was our very first keg fest, maybe 3-4 years ago. We had a keg bar at the back of this room we're in here. And Andy and Ruth came and poured in that corner over there, I believe. So ever since then, I've loved Andy, I've loved his beers. He does some epic stuff. I think his approach to beer is very similar to ours. He has more of a kind of a classic approach. He likes more of the West Coast style of things. And he is known, and he hates this title, he is known as the nicest man in beer because he is just a super, super lovely chap. And collectively, us, Andy, and Stephen Martin, we all have had this love of where our craft beer journey started, and that was with the original US imports into this country. And the original beers that came across were predominantly from the West Coast. They're quite different to what you see now. They were more malt-led. They had a stronger kind of malt backbone to them, and they had a higher level of bitterness. And most of them were what you would call bright. You were able to kind of see through them. You can see your fingers at the other side of the glass. Obviously, the beer world's moved on. Most of the American stuff these days is more what you call East Coast. So that is about a low level of bitterness, a more kind of a fruity characteristic rather than a piney, resiny one. And it does have distinct haze because of the types of cereal grain they used and the type of yeast that they used. So we decided, because all of our journeys started in that place, that what we wanted to do was to honour those original beers that came into the UK from the US, and we would do a Red IPA, which is a style that, regrettably, you don't see too often now. Unfortunately, the UK seems to be, if it has not already, falling out of love with, with red and brown beer. Mm-hmm. So I love red and brown beer. I don't think everything should be pale. I love hops, don't get me wrong, but it's nice to have beers where you've got a real interplay between the hops and the malts, rather than just having the malt stand out as you would with a dark beer, a stout, or a porter, or the hops stand out as you would with like an East Coast or West Coast, for example. So for me, I really like the ones where you've got that better balance, that synergy of the two main ingredients, and that's a harder thing to do. Anybody can just chuck loads of hops in, or use lots of kind of crystal and dark grains to try and accentuate those things. To actually get balance between the two in a way that works, that's a harder thing to achieve. So I love these kind of styles, red IPAs, brown ales, American browns, India stouts, those kind of things. I love those kind of styles. Unfortunately, they don't sell very well, so we don't get to make them that often.
If you do like India stouts, you might want to check out Anspach and Hobday, who just launched a collab with ourselves. It's called Indiana Stout and the Last Crusade. We might have influenced them on the name there a little bit. And if anyone checks out it's on social media at the moment, the can artwork, it's brilliant. It is so, so good. So we were in the middle of festival season when this came up, and we were in London pretty much, one weekend. We had one weekend off, and then London again the next weekend. And myself and Lee are pretty much 7-day-a-week guys. We love what we do, and we work, and we're always at work. And our partners are super tolerant of us. Hi Sal, hi Polly. Sorry about that. But we decided that we just couldn't justify going to London 3 weekends in a row when we'd finally got out of lockdown. We were allowed to do stuff again, and we were literally going straight out to do work. So we stepped back, and we got Andy, our events manager, to head down to London 3 weekends in a row. And he went down and did the collab with Anspach. And look at the can artwork. It is brilliant. It is Andy dressed as Indiana Jones, and I just can't explain to you. If you've been to our tap room when we first launched, or if you've been to see us at any events, you'll know who Andy is.
So Andy is, we call him employee number one.
He is employee number one.
So he got paid by the company before anyone else. So we employed him to be our tap room manager. Wayne and I, for the first 18 months, didn't draw a salary. We wanted to get the business off the ground. So he's employee number one. He was the first guy to get paid. And he's got an uncanny likeness for Peter Griffin. So basically, the can artwork is kind of a Peter Griffin Indiana Jones hybrid. I think it's amazing.
And it's great to get Andy immortalised on one of our cans, because he's the unsung hero of Brew York. He's literally worked so hard for us for 5 years, and it's just nice to see that. And
he just does it. He doesn't complain. Yeah, you can't ask more of him. He's brilliant.
And when the guy said to us, what do you want to do on the can, and they suggested this, it was brilliant. And we sent a few photos, and Andy's always got his eyes shut, mainly because he falls asleep standing up. He's brilliant. He's so funny. And every photo, they asked me to send some photos, and every photo I had of him in my phone, he has his eyes shut. And so I just sent them the photos of his eyes shut, and they were like, no, we actually need a proper photo. And we managed to find some. And
do you remember in The Sportsman in Huddersfield? he fell asleep, stood up, and he does this kind of weeble wobble thing. So he's asleep just doing this,
but
rocking
he's
back
brilliant,
and forward.
though. He just will not fall over.
He's definitely not watching, so we can
But
I'm going to play this back to him. Don't worry
it
about
was
that.
funny though, because at other sportsmen, we decided, okay, it's time to go home. So I literally held his hand and walked back to the hotel with him holding his hand, because he kept wandering into the street. It was so funny. And then we got back to the hotel, and we'd booked some random hotel, and Lee was sharing a room with him. And was it you or was it him?
I went to get pizza, so you took him back to the room, and then I got back to the room, and for one, you'd booked us a bloody double bed. So we were thinking, well, top and tail, we'll make it work. And then I get back to the room and say, that's the double bed. He's just walked in the room and just gone, poof. So he was laid horizontal across the bed. I was like, I'll take the floor then.
And weirdly, we ended up with about 5 hotel rooms instead of the 3 we'd booked. Something went wrong. And I remember walking in the next day, knocking on the door. I was like, you know, we had like 2 rooms with nobody in them, and you're sleeping on the floor, and I'm sleeping on this bed.
Yeah, thanks.
Brilliant.
Thanks.
So,
Anyway,
we divulge.
yeah, back to the beer. So yeah, a little bit more about the beer then. So yeah, it's a red IPA. So what you're going for is that really kind of red hue in there, which I've got a little bit.
Light you really can see.
Yeah, I've got a bit too much condensation on my glass to see it properly. So the way in which that is achieved is you're going to use lots of different types of crystal malts. Crystal malts are also sometimes called caramel malts. So they've undergone a kind of kilning or roasting, not roasting, kilning process where the sugar inside the little cereal grain has caramelized. And you can get different extents of caramelization. So you do it at higher temperatures or you do it for longer durations. So you have ones that are lightly colored, medium colored, strongly colored. So to do something like that, you use all of them. So there's 3 different types of crystal in there. That's what's contributing that lovely red hue to it. And then there's that real kind of carameliness on the finish as well. And then we've used 3 different types of hops, which were Citrus, Centennial and Simcoe, I believe. So in this type of style, Centennial and Simcoe just go beautifully. They're just made for this kind of thing.
And Columbus for bittering.
And Columbus for bittering. Have I missed something? Right, thank you. And then Steve and Martin, when we asked them, well, what hops do you want to put in? All the Citra. Just all the Citra. Yeah, that was the thing. They were very insistent on it. It had to have as much Citra in it as we could possibly squeeze in it. So, yeah, there's a lot of Citra in there, but then we've got Centennial for kind of a bit of floralness, and then Simcoe gives that kind of piney, resiny back note to it.
So you'll have to remind me which one it was, Steve or Martin, who only ate plain food. I kept thinking
that would be Steve.
Steve. Yeah. It was brilliant because I wasn't, unfortunately.
The guy who's watching tonight.
Yeah,
about to get
hi
offended
Steve.
by what you're
I'm
about
not,
to
it's
say.
not going to be offended. I was just going to put my hands up. I wasn't paying attention properly.
Thank
And I was ordering, the guys had already had their breakfast. I don't know what you guys had, but I walked in, had a chat with the guys, and then ordered some lunch in. And I ordered about 10 pizzas for about 10 of us. It was like these huge pizzas, and I just went, okay, one of everything. And then I forgot to order the margarita, and I don't know why or what, but I felt so bad because Steve likes plain food, and he was picking everything off the pizza, and I was like, oh, I'm sure there's a margarita in there, and of all the 10 pizzas that I hadn't ordered it. So, sorry about that, Steve. I dropped one there.
Yeah, and consequently, we, as you do on collabs, had a few beers.
Just said all the beige.
Yeah, mashed potato sandwich. Mashed potato sandwich.
He likes all the beers, yeah. But consequently, as you do on collabs, we had some beers. We went out and had some beers. And then Steve had to go home before the rest of us because he'd not eaten properly all day, had he?
Because he hadn't been able to eat. Yeah, my fault.
Not enough beige.
Yeah.
Not enough beers, yeah, indeed. So I was privileged enough to go down to the Vic down in Colchester, which they refer to as the Essex Yorkshire Embassy. So I asked, does that mean I can do whatever I want because I've got diplomatic immunity? Unfortunately, the answer was no, so I had to behave. But it was lovely to meet one of our subscribers down there who I presented a print of this artwork to. A guy
Signed print.
A signed print
From
yeah.
YouTube sensation.
A signed print for a guy called Bob, who I believe might have just sent this question in. And his partner, it may be wife, apologies if I've not got that right, asked if I would bring some cheesecakes out to him for his birthday and wanted me to sing. So yeah.
What song?
Well, happy birthday.
Oh, right. I thought it was just like karaoke. Come on, singing Ailstorm.
So oh, yeah, I'm not going there with those lyrics. They do some naughty songs. Indeed. Yeah, definitely not that one. So, yeah, I had to walk out with these 2 cheesecakes and sing happy birthday to him.
Why weren't we there to film this? It would have been brilliant. Oh, no. I was on holiday that week. That's my excuse.
But that's the lengths I'll go to for our
subscribers.
fan base.
So if anyone needs Lee to sing to them tonight, put your hand up and speak to Nadia and we'll sort it out. Birthday boy.
Happy birthday, dude. My singing days are over. If it gets to about 11:15 and we need to clear the place, then I'll start singing. Question, please.
Got a question from Bob.
Right, so it may be the Bob to whom I've just referred. Red Danson tastes much better canned than from keg to us. What are your favourite beers that taste better canned than on tap? Ooh.
Every beer.
Better canned than on tap? Yeah. I don't know if I could name one, because for me, beer is predominantly a social thing to do, so going out and drinking stuff on draft is my preferred way to do it. And
Keg and can should be the same because it is literally it's the same product. Sometimes the issues I talked about earlier, where sometimes you get excess oxygen in the can. If you haven't got a good enough canning line, may mean the canned beer might not taste as good as it should. But essentially, it's the same product that's ended up in two different formats. And for me, like Lee said, the social aspect of having it in a pint glass amongst your mates tends to make it taste better, even though it is the same product. But during lockdown, cans were amazing.
it could be temperature.
Yeah.
Because
Oh yeah, and it depends if you're drinking it straight from the can or pouring it into a glass first as well. That was the other thing that might affect it.
So it could very well be temperature though, because 80% of your perception of flavour is nasal, and your ability to perceive aroma is very much down to the temperature of the thing. So the warmer that gets, the more I will smell of it, therefore the more of its flavour I will perceive.
Let's go back to the first free live tastings we did and do the onion.
Oh yeah. Well, do you want me to
You
go
used
there
to
with that
mention it in every one, so if
And
you,
I'm
if
going to
you
have to do it again.
So he's going to have to talk about the onions.
Yeah, so if you don't understand the influence that your nose has over your ability to perceive flavour, either think of this. So when you have a cold, if you notice how your perception of taste is almost
Or if
gone.
you've got COVID.
You can hardly taste anything, or COVID. And if that's not enough to convince you and you really don't like yourself, go and get an onion, hold your nose, bite it. You'll be like, what's so bad about that? You'll hardly perceive the flavour of the onion. Release your nose, and all of a sudden you'll be like, what the fuck have I just done? And
a much nicer way to do that is do the same experiment with jelly babies. So hold your nose. It doesn't matter what colour jelly baby you have, you will not be able to taste it. You've got the texture and everything else, and you let go, and all of a sudden that flavour hits. It's really surreal experiment.
So onions for the masochists, jelly babies for the hedonists.
Well, we don't ever have jelly babies because both of us demolish them. We're like Haribo addicts. It's like, whoa. So there's never any left.
There's a designer outlet near us, and I do not go shopping. I absolutely detest shopping. And my wife has got me out shopping twice because they've got a Haribo store there now.
It was my birthday a couple of weeks back, and Lee came in with my present, which was in a Haribo bag. And my eyes lit up. I was like, oh, "You got me some Haribo?" He's like, "No, it's just a Haribo bag." I was easily pleased. So yeah, we've got a question from Ian. So you guys have gone for a Red IPA. It's not a common style these days. What other styles do you have planned that might surprise us? Kiwi?
Oh, yeah. So we were just saying about our love of all of these kind of styles. So brown ales, NZ brown ale in particular, is a thing we launched in our core range with. It's called Kiwi. So it's kind of, think of Newcastle brown. So you've got that thin brown beer, which is really, really malty. But with Newcastle brown, you're not going to perceive any hop character in that. And then you've got the modern interpretation of the brown ale, which is the US brown ale, where they've basically taken that thin brown malty beer, and then they've put US really fruity tropical hops on top of it. So what we did at the start of our business was we did a beer where, well, let's take that style, but we'll use New Zealand hops. And New Zealand hops are somewhere in the middle ground between UK and the US. So US, big, punchy flavours. One end of the spectrum, fruity, floral, other end of the spectrum, piney, resiny. UK, neutral, soily, brown, anyway. The New Zealand stuff tends to sit in the middle, but perhaps more towards the US end. So it has like interesting, flavourful character, but it's not as punchy as the US stuff. So we put that into this brown ale. We launched with it as a cask beer. in our first year at 5%. And it
wouldn't
was
you?
brown beer, and it was a kind of unusual brown beer, so it didn't sell very well. But we absolutely loved it. Every now and again we brew it. It suits autumn, so we've just brewed it again, and we're going to once again release it as a cask-only beer. And it gets packaged next week, so you'll see it in bars from the week
So
after.
unfortunately, if you're not from York, you need to speak to your local landlord and encourage them to source the cask version of it. So, yeah, Yorkie brown, exactly. So it's one of these things where us as brewers have slightly different taste to the general consumer. New England IPAs in particular, and that East Coast IPA, the easy drinking beers are so popular, but we do drink them, but just nowhere near as much. We tend to go back to what got us into beer in the first place. So that tends to be the more piney, resinous West Coast stuff, which is what hence Red Danson, what Lee was just saying with Kiwi. Unfortunately, from a like a business perspective, they don't sell anywhere near as well as those type of easy drinking pale ales. But we didn't come into this to brew beer that was a big seller or generic type of beer. We brewed beer that we wanted to drink. And yes, we do lots of beers and we do lots of different things, but we would happily drink any one of our beers, and so that's what we wanted to do. And I will try and restrict Lee every now and then when he says, "Okay, I want to make a brown beer and I want it to do like
I like doing like red
double
ales,
brew of it
browns,
and then
ambers, yeah, all these kind of things. But
we will drink it and we will sell it, but can we maybe do it on a smaller scale so we make sure that people like it? And I don't know, it's
such a shame.
a
I love
cautious
these
thing.
style of beers, and if you I like these kind of things, seek out the Colonel. It's the kind of godfather of Bermondsey. One of the very original breweries of the craft beer movement in the UK. And people rave about their pales. And yeah, their pales are good, but for me, what I really love about what they do is all of the browns and the dark beers. And one of the things they do is an export stout. And we're working on a recipe for an export stout as well. I'd love to do something that, if it gets in the ballpark of what Colonel does, I'll be a happy man.
a massive influence of this beer as well was what Andy does at Elusive. He does a beer called Oregon Trail, which is an amazing West Coast IPA. We do a beer called Big Eagle, which is probably one of our favourite beers we make, and that was a big influence in this beer, this style, what we wanted to do. But of our core beers, and we have a lot of core beers, Big Eagle's our slowest selling beer, and we're just stubborn. We're like, the style will come back. People will want it again. We just love that beer. We want everyone else to love it. It's just such a cool, piney, resinous thing. And every time people drink it, they tell us how much they love it. But it just doesn't sell anywhere near as well as the your East Coast easy drink, your time traveling taxi style beers.
Until 2 months ago, it was the UK's reigning best IPA.
Yeah, exactly.
And it sells really slowly.
We beat Jaipur into. We got gold in the category, which is
Jaipur
amazing.
didn't even get silver; he got
got
bronze
bronze.
on that occasion.
Which is again one of my favourite West Coast. So no, it's a funny style, but we love it, and we're stubborn, so we'll keep making sure that you guys have got access to it. So hopefully, when you love it like we do, it'll sell more.
Well, you just made Steve's night because he loves Big Eagle, and I
good taste.
I did hint there might be a possibility of dropping it from the core range again because of its sales. So I think he almost cried. So you just made his night.
We've got one from Matthew saying, because we need to get on to the next beer. Oh, perfect timing actually. Have you ever thought about barrel aging an Imperial IPA? Sierra Nevada barrel aged a double IPA to celebrate 10 years of Torpedo, and it is fantastic. Torpedo is one of my favourite beers when I got into beer. I love Sierra Nevada Pale. That was the grandfather for me, but Torpedo was amazing. It was so good, and it still is.
Do you know part of the reason Torpedo's is amazing? Because of crystal malt, caramel malt. So Sierra Nevada have such scale that they got their maltster to develop a very specific type of crystal malt for them. So they said, well, that one's too dark, that one's too pale. So they were like Goldilocks. I want the bit in the middle. So they got their maltster to make a very specific type of crystal. It had a certain amount of caramel and a certain amount of colour.
You say Pacific?
Specific. Which is then what they made Torpedo with.
So Torpedo is one of my favourite original beers, and yeah, we do this a fair bit. We don't tell you about it. We basically experiment. So we usually brew a few double IPAs a year, and then we keep a few and we test them. And then if we're happy with them, it's a funny one because effectively what happens if you lose all hop character, so all the money we spent on that brew, all the expensive parts of the ingredients, you won't be able to taste. But in 18 months' time, the beer itself takes on a new character, and it's such a cool thing. It's a sweet, effectively a barley wine. So we tend to experiment, and if we're happy with them, we might release it. We've done it once before, and we always do this. We always have some sat around, and we try to experiment with them, but you won't see them very often. If we're happy with them, we'll release them. If not,
to be honest, I'm not. It's not a thing I think to do. I don't think it's a thing that most brewers would think to do, because the adage is hops fade fast, and they're pretty much the most expensive ingredient we can work with. So if you're going to spend all that money to put that hop character into the beer, and then you're just going to pop it in a barrel, and by the time you consume it, all that hop character's gone, then why did you spend the money? The only reason I guess you would do it is because those hop compounds can break down into other things and evolve into other things that become
biotransformation you talked about earlier. So it's an accidental biotransformation where you're getting some different flavours from the byproduct.
So basically big molecules over time break down into smaller molecules, and some of those smaller molecules might have interesting characteristics. But it's an expensive experiment.
So you'll usually find stuff like that in our tap room or beer hall, because if we're going to, or hopefully, well, maybe not hopefully, but occasionally we might decide if it's good enough, we'll put it out to you guys who are subscribers in a small volume to be able to try, and you tell us what you think of it. But it's not something we do on a big scale and barrel age a lot of it and then hope that it's going to be good. We're for us, barrel aging's about our dark beers because we know that they will hold up to time.
So, next questions. Have you ever considered brewing a hop-free beer, e.g. a Gruit or a Heather Ale?
We might have done that.
So we've not done an entirely hop-free beer. Alistair, our special project brewer, and Pavel, who's just joined us at the back of the room. Pavel is from Fine Ales, or Fine Ales actually have two breweries. They have Fine, who do the more classic beers like these types, and they also have something called the Origin Project, where they do mixed and spontaneous fermented beers. Have I got that right? Near enough? Totally correct. Yeah. So these are the kind of beers where you're really just going to let nature do its job. You're going to let whatever's in the air inoculate the beers, or you're going to use specialist types of bacteria or fungi, etc. And these are slow-working things, so they're going to take kind of 2 to 3 years to evolve into what you want them to be. And quite often you'll then blend them in the way that a master kind of winemaker might to bring out the best characteristics of different batches of these beers. So what has happened today is we've been privileged to have Pavel with us, and he's worked with Alistair, and they've brewed a golden sour. And we're going to ferment it first with a normal type of yeast. We're then going to put some yeast in it, honey in it towards the end of its fermentation. So because Pavel's come down from Scotland to do this, we've got some heather honey. So whatever wild yeast, whatever natural bacteria happens to be present in that wild yeast will then go into the fermenter, and that will do the next part of the fermentation. And then we're going to put it in barrels for a minimum of 2 years, probably more like 3 years, I would think.
No one told me 3 years.
Yeah. So this is the longest commitment we've ever made to a project, but this is what we want this site here to be about doing these kind of things. So it's going to be a long time before you and us see the fruits of these labours, but we're super excited about the kind of things we're going to be able to create together. And if you haven't had Origin Project beer, you need to get out and have them. And for anyone that's here tonight, we've got 3 or 4 of them pouring upstairs, so you can go and try them. The Nadar Blackcurrant one is really good. Number 14, Nadar Blackcurrant, that's the one. And the Saison Beams, Beams is banging as well.
So the super rare beers, and you certainly don't see them very often in York. So this isn't a way to promote our venue. You know, if you want to come down to our venue, we're more than welcome. But the beers are amazing. So get upstairs and try them if you can. They're really, really good. You won't see them very often. And if you do want to try them, actually go on the Fine Ales website. You can order it from their web store in bottles. They're really, really good. So make sure you try them. We were more than flattered that the guys agreed to come and do something with us, because we haven't got anything under our belt yet in the new project. So this is like such an amazing start for us. So.
And they're a real, is this right to say, kind of like a field to glass brewery now, where you source a lot of your own raw materials, and they even have their own herd of deer. So you can get venison from these guys now, which I will definitely be doing at some point.
Is it expensive?
Yeah.
No.
Have you ever encountered? Oh dear! Oh my God! Oh
He
my
got it.
God.
He got it.
Oh,
Hey,
my God!
I've joined you in my 40s.
I've
now.
already
I've
sworn
got
too
the dad
many
jokes.
times tonight. Don't make me do it again.
So we're on the next beer. I am anyway. Someone's got some red Danson to finish. Someone was out last night drinking, so he's playing catch up a little bit. But Jackie Flan Maple Edition. So anyone who's one of our subscribers, which hopefully you guys are, I've tasted Jackie Flan. It was a really cool beer we did. It was a pastry sour, so fruits of the forest, lots and lots of different berries in a pastry sour, which means we use vanilla, a little bit of lactose for sweetness, and then you've got that the vanilla counteracts the tartness of the sour, so it makes it like really easy drinking, considering it's a 7.5% beer. So when we brewed this beer, I was a little bit concerned that a big batch on our kit, it was going to be hard to sell that much of a sour beer. So I spoke to Lee and I said, can we divert part of the batch and can we hold it in tank, and then we'll launch Jackie Flan, and then we'll basically release a maple edition a month afterwards. And that's kind of what we did. So one of the brewer's favourite beers for quite a long time was the Omnipolo's Bianca, which is, we haven't copied Omnipolo, but this is basically it was a maple fruits of the forest pastry sour. And when we decided we were going to make Jackie Flan, I was like, this is a great opportunity for us to do something similar. And hopefully it won't quite be as expensive
What's
as
the first plagiarism is the best form of flattery?
Oh, exactly,
Something
yeah.
like and to be fair, Omnipolo weren't the first to do it. This was done in the American market, and then Omnipolo brought it to Europe.
But they do it really well, and we've enjoyed a lot of their beers, and they've been quite an influence in some of the flavour profiles we try to use. But yeah, when I used to try and keep a bit of a rein on Lee and look at what ingredients he's putting in, but he kind of knows the what will draw my attention now. So if he puts too much in there, and then the recipe cost goes above this, I'll probably batter an eyelid or whatever. Yeah, so he decided that if he was going to go above that limit, he'd smash it out the park. So he put 8,500 pounds of blackberries, blueberries, and cherries into the base beer. And I was just like, I was looking at it because I work out what price we can sell the beer for, and I was like, fucking hell, Lee, that's.
Yeah, this is
Did I drop the first F-bomb there? Sorry.
No, I won't do them too. I'm like too ahead of you.
Oh my God, that's a lot of fruit we've put in. But fruit prices have also gone through the roof this year.
Yeah, this is like 10
this is
quid
a
a pint at the
Brexit
bar
impact, unfortunately.
But it's
But
amazing.
yeah, you can. There's so much fruit going into it, but unfortunately, there's lots of things that Brexit's impacted on us now, and one of the things is fruit. So we are looking at different ways we can source it from the UK, but a lot of the fruit we use is sourced from Germany or from Europe. So we've ended up paying a lot more for our fruit this year than we usually would have. But anyway, let's not obsess about money. Unfortunately,
But basically, the combination of Brexit and COVID has stopped the kind of migrant workers that would ordinarily pick the fruits from going to pick the fruits. And then there's been harvest issues. So the cost of fruit, we're not talking about going up like 20-30%. It's gone up like 300-400%. So I'd perhaps didn't know that when I ordered all the ingredients to these beers. So yeah, it has ended up super expensive, but I'm really, really pleased with the results.
If you ever want to do a deal with someone, do it with Lee, because he asks for the price after he's bought it.
Yeah, not always, but yeah,
So,
fair comment.
But anyway, the base beer we loved, and we had this in mind that we do this maple edition. And for me, I really like pastry sours. I like pastry stouts as well. But I like pastry sours. The sweetness really counteracts the sourness, and it makes it really drinkable. But with this beer, I was like, it's great, but is there something else we could do with it? And once the guys had done the maple edition, I was like, wow, it's so similar, but quite different at the same time. It sounds like strange to say that, but the maple just brings a new dimension to it. And with Bianca, you guys loved it. I liked it, but I found the maple too much. It was sat in the back of my throat. I don't think that we've used too much maple in this. I think we've got the balance quite good.
I'd agree. Yeah.
But Bianca's an amazing beer, so try it. Just get a load
Well,
out
and
before you try
Bianca is in fact a series of beers now. So they're all like lassi gozes, I think is what they call them. So lassi's the Indian yogurt-based drink. Am I correct in saying that?
Mango lassi is amazing. When you go for
So it's the yogurt-based drink that usually has some form of fruit, and goze is the German style of sour that has sometimes fruit, but always has a little bit of salt in it as well. So yeah, they've brought in all these things from all different directions, and that's very much Omnipolo's thing. If you think it shouldn't work, they'll probably do it. And a lot of the time, to be fair, it does work. And it will cost you a lot of money a can.
Yeah. Well, so will this, unfortunately. That's the byproduct of adding so much fruit to it. But we try and balance it out a little bit. It's not the strongest bit, 7.5%, but that's pretty much borderline. In the UK, as soon as you go above 7.5%, you pay more tax. And I don't just mean a little bit more tax, you pay a lot more tax. So there's never any point bringing out an 8%, 8.5% beer, because you guys at home might be able to taste the slight addition we put in the strength, but you'll be able to taste it in your wallet more because it will add so much more in terms of the price you pay.
Well, would you know the numbers on that? So if it was 8% instead of 7.5%, are we talking the price suddenly jumps £1, £2 a can? Is that kind of what we're talking about?
No. But per can, if you think about it, a traditional 4 or 5% beer will be about, I don't know, I'm going to say a number and I'm going to be challenged on it now. But
should we have this answer next time?
Yeah, I'll go
so
to
next time we'll explain this
research the answer.
properly.
But it makes a massive difference. As soon as you go above 7.5%, it genuinely rockets. And that's why when the guys say, "Oh, we're going to do this 8% beer," I was like, do we have to do it 8%, or could we do a 7.49% version? And you guys will appreciate it more because it will save so much money on tax and all. So yeah, I say you guys will appreciate it more because unfortunately we do pass the tax on. So if we're going to be pay more in duty, it means unfortunately you guys are going to pay more in duty because we can't afford to absorb that tax. So it gets passed on to the end consumer. So when you go to the bar and you buy a pint, if we've had to pay more tax,
we need to move on. We can't be talking about tax.
Boring.
This is not what you've come to.
We've given you some free beer, so we're going to bore you to death with tax.
Sounds like we might have a
and
tax
hops.
specialist in the room, though, that's getting something out of this. Right, so before we get to the next set of questions, we'll just tell you about what's coming in your box next time. So it's going to be another box, and we have a little
Have you been to the loo yet?
I have not been to the loo. What?
Bloody hell.
What?
You said we're going to it's going to be a box.
Amazing box, I said.
go
I said
to the
it's going to be another amazing box. Not it's going to be another box. Yeah. It's going to come in cardboard, guys. You're going to love it. Yeah.
Double fly.
Double ply. Yeah.
You just sing, I'm living in a box, living in a car.
Yeah. So it's going to be another amazing box, and we have a theme this time around. It's going to be the Battle of the Imperials. So we've referenced a few times tonight that we do a West Coast IPA that currently comes in at 6.4%. So we've taken that base recipe and we've ramped it up to 9%. And next month you're going to get Imperial Eagle. And as a counterplay to that, our production manager Roddy has just departed for greener pastures in the last week or two. But we said, as your passing gift to us, would you brew us another dipper? So he's done an East Coast dipper, also coming in at 9%. So next month you will be able to judge for yourself. Top of the series, is the East Coast or the West Coast better? I'll give you a clue. The answer is West Coast.
Blend them and make a mountain.
Or you can blend them and make a mountain IPA. Anyone familiar with the mountain IPA concept? So you've got an East Coast, you've got a West Coast, in the middle you have mountains. So they've decided that beer that is kind of the middle ground of the two is now called the mountain IPA. So it may have some haze, it may have a little bit of bitterness, but not as much bitterness as the West Coast. So now you have these things called mountain IPAs. It's also called marketing.
I was going to say marketing IPA.
Yes.
We'll sell you some shit. There
Right.
you go.
I'm gonna so regret that when we make a mountain IPA next year, aren't we?
Oh, yeah. Next year.
Next year, maybe. So we have got a mammoth box in terms of ABV next time. So we're going to start out by drinking Imperial Eagle, 9% West Coast double IPA. We're then going to go into a 9% East Coast IPA. We're then going to need a bit of a palate cleanser. So we're then going to have something we're calling Granny Smith's Brambling Habit, which is a apple and blackberry pie pastry sour that we've made with Jordan from Unbarred down in Brighton. And then we're going to conclude it with another 9%er, which is a beer called Release the Krenakan, which Pavel has brewed with us yesterday. Yesterday that one.
Yeah.
So yeah, Pavel's actually brewed 2 beers with us while he's been here. So we've done one on the big kit, which is this Krenakan milk stout. And Krenakan is a Scottish dessert made out of raspberries and oatmeal and whiskey. So we're going to have lots of raspberry puree in there. We put lots of oats into the grain bill from which we made the beer. And we have whiskey-infused wood pieces that we're going to infuse the whole beer over. And this has been brewed for something called Collabageddon. So Collabageddon is an annual project initiated by Andy at Elusive.
The nicest man in brewing.
Nicest man in brewing, indeed. And he gets together 12 breweries, is that right?
Nadia's going to have to...
Nadia, I think it's 12 breweries, isn't it? Or is it 10 breweries? Anyway, he gets together a selection of breweries. 18. Wow.
We end up with loads of beers.
Yeah.
Probably.
So Andy gets together a selection of breweries, apologies for not knowing the specific number, and he then does a little bit of a lottery draw and says, you're brewing with them at home, so in your brewery, and you're brewing with them away. So you then end up with this big pack of breweries. We kind of rigged the system because we said, Andy, we really want to brew with Fine. Can you make that happen? So we ended up brewing with
We
Fine.
happened to be at a beer festival down in London with Andy at the time, and we took him for a few drinks and kept buying him drinks. And we're like, you know, he said we wanted to brew with Fine.
So we got our wish. So we've done our home leg with Fine. That's happened over the last couple of days. And then we're doing an away leg with Leviathan. And at this point, I should reel off who else is in the box. Can you remember who else is
There's loads. I do.
contributing?
I know a few. There's
Collabageddon. Who else has done it this year?
Turning Point. So Turning Point are also
Turning Point,
local
Runaway.
breweries. You've got obviously Elusive, which is Andy. You've got the guys from Zapato, which is Leeds. Huddersfield. You've got Neptune, brew from Liverpool.
Leviathan.
That's who we.
Yeah, we said that one. Yeah.
Ampersand,
Ampersand, Almasty,
Almasty from Newcastle.
Leonsea,
Beyonce. Who's
Umbard.
Beyonce?
Leonsea. It's in
You.
Essex.
All right. So yeah, there's loads of breweries. So we're doing the launch. The York launch will be in the beer hall. So that's on the 11th of November. Is it 19th? Sorry. It's almost like I've had a few drinks. So 19th of November, we'll be launching it upstairs. We've got all those beers on. In Leeds, they've got it at the Five Points, Turk's Head. And then there's about I think 18 venues across the country who are doing the launch. It's going to be really cool. There's going to be loads of really interesting beers, and I think we've obviously done the usual and gone the strongest and most crazy beer we can, and everyone else will be going for a sessionable beer. We've got a 9% stout on.
Well, you got to do what you got to do.
Pints all round.
Right, so back into some more questions. So this is from Dan. Can you tell us how the maple was added and when in the process? Right, you're not going to like this answer. So the maple is in fact a flavouring, because maple is of course a sugar-containing thing. So it would have been difficult for us to take a beer that was already finished and to add something else with sugar in, because then the fermentation would start again, and if that would happen in your cans, you would not be very forgiving.
Exploding.
If that sticky,
Especially when it's this
sticky
colour.
berry stuff went all over your front room. So yeah, we've used a maple flavouring. We got a series of different ones in, and we decided which one we thought worked best. This was the one we selected. I think it's got that slight smoky character you get to certain types of maple without it being overpoweringly smoky.
So when we, if we go back to the basics of brewing, we use grain to get sugar. We then convert that sugar into alcohol by introducing yeast. And we, as a brewery, use lots of different flavours, so lots of fruits, lots of different interesting additions. And a lot of these things bring sugars with them themselves. So you've probably noticed we've never done a strawberry beer. So strawberry is an amazing flavour, but the sugar in the fructose, the basically the sugar in a strawberry is super fermentable. So once you try and use that in a beer, what typically happens is the sugar will be converted into alcohol, and you won't get a residual strawberry flavour. So to do that, you've got to be pretty fake with it. You end up with like a Haribo tasting, you know, like those giant strawberry tasting.
Oh, that would actually be epic, though. Why would
Well, I do love giant strawberries, whatever they're called. They are pretty cool.
No.
How many times can we mention them in one live
Brew York's YouTube brought to you by Haribo.
But we try to get the balance right. We've used we didn't used to use any flavourings, but we then started looking at what we could do with the fruit additions, what we could do with the essentially what it came down to was nuts. It was so hard to get a nut flavour into a beer without infecting your brewery for people who have allergens with nuts, that we looked at what the other breweries were doing at the time, and they were using nut flavourings, and that's the first time we used them in our brewery. And then since then we only use them if we can't replicate the flavour using fruit additions or using the natural additions. So Tonkoko, the OG, is still 100% natural. So the production guys absolutely hate us because we still get the coconut, we still infuse it with the cacao nibs, and it's a bit of a horrible job by the time it's pumped through the addition vessel and all the other.
Yeah, and it's a 3 to 4 person job to dig all of that coconut back out.
But there's
certain
flavours that we don't think replicate what it should be. So some people have used coconut flavourings in beers. We don't think it tastes the same. We don't think it tastes as good. Whereas there's other flavours where usually nuts, where it works better because a lot of the flavour, like we said earlier about the tasting of the onions and the jelly babies, come from the nose, and nuts in particular. A lot of it comes from the nose. You smell peanut. I've got to get that right. You smell peanut and you taste peanut.
Oh, we're at that level now, are we?
Yeah.
Right. Okay.
But yeah, and most of the best peanut flavoured beers. It's about.
Can I dig you out of this hole?
Yeah, it's all about the aroma. So that's the biggest part of it.
The peanut one is a good reference example actually, because for me, where we select to use flavourings is really dependent on the kind of yardstick that's been set before us. So if we're going to put peanut into a beer, for me the immediate reference point is Belching Beaver's peanut butter stout. Mm-hmm. So that's what people now think peanut in beer tastes like. So if I then got peanuts and put it into a beer, first of all I've created a huge allergen risk in my brewery, and we have to have special testing and special cleaning to be able to deal with that. And it's not going to give the flavour that you're going to expect and you're going to get in something like Belching Beaver's peanut butter milk stout. So the only way I can give you the flavour that is like their flavour is to do what they do, which is to use flavourings. So it's not a thing we set out to do every time, but sometimes to do these flavours, the only way to achieve it is to go a little bit artificial, unfortunately.
And we've done loads of experiments. We've done lots of different beers in lots of different ways. And one of the great examples recently for us is a beer called Flat Pack Fika. So we actually released it again recently, which was 9.5% from memory.
Yep.
9.5% Tonka, caramel, and what's the nut? pecan milk stout, and we used pecan in the first version we did, and it was horrible. It was no, the beer. Sorry, let me get this right.
Yeah,
the beer wasn't
qualify
horrible.
that.
Yeah, sorry, the beer wasn't horrible. The dealing with pecan was horrible. So the beer was a really cool beer, and but the pecan flavour was very, very subtle, and the nightmare for the brewers of getting the pecan back out of the vessels and dealing with all that horribleness and the expense of the nuts themselves was ridiculous. So when we came around to rebrewing it, which was probably 2 years downstream from originally brewing it, it was one of the things we looked at. There was no real benefit for us of using pecan in this beer, so we need to try and get that flavour coming through without the nightmare we had of brewing the original. And sometimes there's an exception where we look at it and there's no real benefit of using pecan over the flavouring.
So we have had many questions amass.
Yeah, and while we're waffling. And,
so let's plough through some questions before doing...
I thought these ones we'd done.
No, these are new ones.
Quickfire one.
Yeah.
So, okay, here's my quickfire one. Have you suffered from the carbon dioxide shortage? Yes and no. Yes, our bars cannot get CO2 for love or money. It's so difficult to get the small containers we use for dispensing beer in the bars. We have managed to basically beg and borrow from the brewery, and we're using some of the containers that we would have used there, but we're really struggling in our bars. Thankfully, in our brewery, we have a giant cryo tank, which usually...
They turned up to fill it yesterday, and he didn't have enough CO2 in his massive tank to actually fill it because he came to us last.
So we got 15% of the tank full, which the guys have pretty much used up today.
Well, not pretty much. It is now empty. We now have no CO2.
So when I was on holiday a couple of weeks back, I got a message from Nadia, a market manager on my right. She said, Channel 5 have just messaged saying, can they come and film at the brewery to talk about the CO2 shortage? I was like, yeah, free publicity. And then Lee's like, no, we've got CO2.
No,
we had CO2.
Quick, drain it.
Yeah.
No.
I know. Empty the tank.
No, they're like, do you want to come on 5 and talk about like the CO2 crisis? And I'm like, I've just had 2,000 litres of it delivered today.
But there is a crisis.
As much as it would have been amazing to be on national telly like that, I can't go on and talk about the impact of CO2 when I know I've got 2,000 litres of it just sat there.
Didn't stop North going on TV talking about it.
Well, maybe they are having issues. I'm issuing an immediate retraction on that comment. You don't want to get us in trouble there, man.
So next.
Quickfire about that.
We need him in
No, right.
So quick fire. So we've got 2 minutes till go on the next beer.
Next one. Nadia, you're going to love this one. An idea for future beers and artwork. This is coming from Kerry. Could subscribers get a chance to be on a can? I love that idea. We should do that.
Oh, 100%. It's one of the things that we...
Like the Where's Wally sort of thing.
Yeah. What? Are you implying... Nadia said, where's Wally, if you subscribers want to appear in the can. So Nadia's implying that you're Wally.
No, I think we would do it very much in this kind of style,
You
where
can be one
we've
person
got
or
ourselves and Ted. You can be on there with us or with other subscribers.
You could
we'll
have,
work out the detail later, because this is quick fire.
You could have Lee
Right.
sign an autograph
Move
for you
on,
on the can.
move on. How often do you make a recipe and then decide, nope, this isn't it? What would you say your success rate is?
It's high.
Until recently, pretty good.
Yeah.
A couple of hiccups recently, but most of them do get through.
You guys are sour and stout specialists. What is your all-time favourite sour that you've ever made? For me, it's...
You're going to say Kirsch Russell, aren't
Kirsch
you?
Russell.
Yeah.
It is literally... Well, I haven't tried
This year's dream.
this year's Dreams of Brew York, which is our new sour for Christmas, which we're going to tell you about in two... Well,
Last year's Dreams of Brew York, I would say, would be mine, which was blueberry and cranberry. And this year's you'll find out about soon. In fact, we haven't
we missed
done...
that. We missed the Christmas
You-
section.
you've
We talked
taken-
so
you-
much.
You've taken the Christmas section away.
We had a whole section
Doesn't
talking
matter.
about Christmas beers, but we...
I don't need it. I remember... Anne, I don't need it. I remember the
So
beers
let's go
I
on to the
made.
next beer.
I don't need it. But we'll do that in a bit. Right.
It says Christmas beers on the prompt.
I'm off to France on Sunday. Have you ever had a good craft beer there? My only experience of France is snowboarding. So I was drinking like grappa and stuff, so no.
I went to...
No, grappa's Italy, isn't it? What was I drinking in France?
I went to France and I drank Desperados on draft.
Wow. Next.
Yeah. Sorry, I'm sure the scene's changed a lot in the 4 years since I went to France.
A lot of the Brew York beers tend to be quite high ABV. Is this process recipe or by design? Okay. Right. So to try and get
Yes and
maximum
no.
flavour is going to require a larger amount of raw ingredient. Many of those are sugar containing. So the more malt we use, the more sugar we have, the higher the ABV. And to try and get a beer that kind of feels right in the mouth, you want more things in there that are going to contribute towards the mouthfeel. So that's a lot more raw ingredient, a lot more grain. You get more sugar again. So mostly you're going to end up with more alcohol. So for a pale, I would say the sweet spot is around about the 5.5 to 6.5% mark. Anything under that, it's going to feel thin. So we, being called Brew York, have always gone the more American way. Over there, they care less about these things. You'd be stunned to see that they don't even advertise the alcohol in many states. You just get a beer and you don't even know what you're drinking.
It's just listed and you just drink it. Price and ABV doesn't matter. But yeah, it's not intentional, but yeah, that's the style that we like, and that's the type of thing we want to do. We do try and do lower ABV stuff. It just doesn't happen. You know, if we bring in 5 or 6 specials out, maybe 1 or 2 of them will be lower ABV, and the other 4 will be higher ABV. It's not an intentional thing. It's just the type of experimental beers we like to brew tend to suit higher strengths. So, sorry, on the rapid fire then, Liam Wayne, what is your all-time fave collab, and is there any certain ones you're excited about in the future from Matthew? So, yeah, my all-time favourite was the one we did with Fine yesterday and today, but my second favourite,
Smooth!
my favourite that I've been and attended was up with Fierce in Aberdeen. It was brilliant. The guys were so welcoming. Their brewery is so aligned to what we do. We start at a similar time. They do pretty similar beers and styles and flavours that we do, and they were just so welcoming. They literally. Well, I didn't know what to say. It was just brilliant. We had such an amazing time. We went up for 4 days, which is a long time to go for a collab and do stuff. But we were so busy. We were doing. We only brewed 1 beer, but yeah, exactly. I was stood on the canning line for 3 days, and then I brewed a collab for 1 day. No, the guys were brilliant. They're welcoming. Got at the time, Brewdog weren't a Boo Hiss company to know, so they introduced us to Brewdog. We took us up there. They gave us a big tour around Ellen, showed us what those guys had achieved in their time. It was just amazing. It was just really cool experience, and Lee couldn't make it. So
it's kind of a freak thing that I think we've had people from Brew York go up to Fierce 3 times.
Yeah,
and it's never worked in a way that I've been able to go. I do really need to.
I think the guys from Fierce have like, can Lee make it up? And we're like, no. Like, oh, let's make it happen then.
It's nothing personal, guys. I do apologise.
So, quickly, we need to get the next beer poured so that we can then do some more
my
questions.
favourite collab, I would think this might be a Boo Hiss moment now as well, because they have subsequently sold out. But when you entered this industry, you had certain things that you put on a kind of pedestal, and these were the people that you wanted to work with. And the first that we got to do that with was Magic Rock. So the fact that we got to work with those guys, that was a real kind of pinch yourself moment.
We were kids in a candy shop. When we heard that this was going to happen, we were like running around screaming. Like, hey! it was honestly, it was brilliant. This is like these are our idols, and they still do amazing stuff. But at the time, this is before Magic Rock got bought by Lion, so it was even better for us. It was amazing, wasn't it? It was just like I remember talking about it. So every night, like, we're going to go brew. We're going to do.
And you might not remember the beer. What was it?
It was the Sour IPA,
vulgar display of power. Sour. Vulgar display of sour, which is a play on a Pantera thing, which was an amazing beer. And they took our kind of graphics and did it in the Magic Rock style. It was great artwork, great beer.
And the other one that you might not, or nowadays people might not appreciate as much, is we did a collab with Beavertown 2 years ago, and this was after they'd been bought by Heineken, so this was after the Boo Hiss time. But at the same time, these are another brewery who magically, massively influenced us getting into beer. and we wanted to go and see what they've been doing and see how things work for them. And they asked us to come and brew with them for their 7th birthday. And it was just amazing just to see how they'd achieved what they'd achieved and what they'd done and what was going on with Heineken at the time, and just to see that type of thing. And then the icing on the cake was when the beer was launched, and me and they were talking. We were stood talking at this beer festival in their yard. And if you don't know, the guy who owns, well, who 51% owns Beavertown is a guy called Logan Plant. He's a really cool guy, really nice guy. His dad happens to be Robert Plant of Led Zeppelin.
So we're there at like the 8th birthday party, having a beer, and then Logan walks up with Robert Plant and his brother, and he's like, "This is my brother and this is my dad." And I'm like, "That man needs no introduction." Oh my God.
It was so funny because he basically said to us, he's like, "Oh, how are you doing, guys?" Blah blah blah. He's like, I just want to drink something like normal, like a bitter, blah blah blah." And he's talking to us, and we'd launched.
Like, don't go near our bar.
We'd launched brownie pints, a 7.5% brownie milk stout, and then we took a sour grapes and silly japes, and then the 8.5%
Pastry sour
grape, and we're like, "Yeah, you probably want to drink our beer." And it was just a bit surreal. And then I remember for the rest of the festival, we were going drinking beers, doing stuff, and all I was trying to do is film Lee with Robert Plant in the background. It was just like a really weird thing. Lee, stand there and I'll take a photo, and then he's in the background of your shot. But, so it was a bit of a surreal moment.
Yeah, I remember messaging my dad to say, "You won't guess who I've just met." And in typical dad fashion, his mobile was not mobile, it wasn't with him. Yeah.
So we're about 6 minutes late, but that's not too bad for us. That's not too bad at all. So hopefully we've given you an extra 6 minutes for your beer to warm up.
And we're not going to do this question now, because it's a good question, but it's certainly not a quick fire one, so we're going to come back to that one. Yeah.
So have you poured yours already?
May have done.
Okay.
Yeah.
So it's you anyway.
Cheers, everyone, because we're getting some really nice comments about us.
Cheers, everyone.
Cheers,
I believe the initial feedback is pretty good on this one.
I haven't had it since Leeds International Beer Festival.
Oh, yeah.
A month ago.
Oh, my God, that's good.
Not vain at all.
If I miss this for myself. So here we have the latest iteration of the Tonkoko series. Also, the highest ABV we have done thus far in the Tonkoko series. The pinnacle before this was 10.6% for Empress Tonkoko. So we brought this up to 12%. You've got your usual coconut, cacao, tonka, and vanilla. And to this, we've added salted caramel. That's...
Sorry.
Yeah, I'm really enjoying that. It's really, really balanced. It's good.
Yeah, everything else in the beer is as natural as Tonkoko, but yeah, the salted caramel has come from flavouring. So apologies about that, but we weren't going to start.
And I have a friend that I used to work with called Richard Brew. He's a subscriber. Jeez, the beer's kicking in. He's a subscriber. He regularly watches this. And he's already drunk one of these. He already ordered before the box came out. And he reckons this is the best stout he's ever had.
Wow, that's a compliment indeed.
It's a high praise indeed. Yeah.
Thankfully, it's sold out. It literally has. It's sold out a few weeks ago.
It lasted about 2.5 weeks, and this is all gone.
So hopefully you guys can enjoy it. And if you've got it at home and you've got a couple of cans at home, maybe share the can and then save one. I don't know. We didn't barrel age it either, did we?
Not this one. Not to say we won't in the future.
Yeah, normally when we brew a big stout nowadays, we barrel age a few of them. So we'll probably have to rebrew it and barrel age it. Probably. Thank you.
Should come with a warning on it. It does. It says units.
Well,
how many? Oh my God, I can't read that. 5.3 units. Yes. You maybe shouldn't drive after this one, guys.
No. So we did a sneak preview. So we had this beer almost ready. When I say almost ready, we have a centrifuge on site now, and we tried to centrifuge our beers to get out the last of the hop matters or the particles we don't want to end up in the final
Yeast
beer.
as well.
Yeast in particular, yeah. And oh, that guys, we need to launch this at Leeds International because that's where that's our Tonkoko thing. We every year we try and bring a Tonkoko beer out for Leeds International.
So we've done Imperial Tonkoko.
And then
launched
cherry
Tonkoko there.
and
We
barrel.
launched Empress Tonkoko
Yeah,
there. And now we've launched salted caramel Tonkoko
There you
there.
go,
So get yourself to Leeds International Beer Festival next year, and you will encounter another iteration of this beer.
Barrel aged salted duck. Easier for you to say than me. But yeah, no. We like to try and do something new at the festival each year, and this was one of the ones we really wanted to push out. So the guys did as a sneak 2 kegs, 2 50-litre kegs of 12% beer. And we put one in our bar in Leeds and one in at the festival at Leeds International. It kicked so quick. As soon as we put it on at the festival, it kicked in about, I don't know, 4 hours or something like that. For a 50-litre 12%, that's pretty quick. And yeah, it stayed on in our bar for a few more days than that. But yeah, it was super popular, and we were super pleased with the initial feedback. But it took us a little bit longer to finally get the cans packaged and then the beer out into the public. And yeah, it kicked pretty much as quickly once we put it into trade. It was one of those ones where we kind of wish we'd had more, but unfortunately, even with the big kit we've got now, brewing a beer at 12%, we won't ever get a big yield when we package the beer. That means the volume of beer that we get at the end of it is never as much as we start with. So the yield's a lot lower than we'd normally get with a 5% pale. So anyway, I've waffled a lot about that. And
it's Steve, if you're still with us, I just want to point out I was listening to your podcast when you first the question, which ingredient would you like to never see in beer again? And you said number 1, coconut, and number 2, Tonka. So I was listening. It is noted.
What do you think about this one?
To be honest, what I love about what we do as a brewery is we're very broad waterfront. So you might not like our stouts, but then maybe you like our sours. If you don't like our sours, maybe you like our pils. If you don't like the pils, we do quite good lager now. So we've got all the bases covered.
What happens if you like rhubarb and custard sweets?
Shop elsewhere. No, of course we've got rhubarb and Streisand. Yeah. Right. So more questions coming in.
So before the more questions, how's about we teased out the 4 Christmas beers?
Yes,
we
should
were supposed
do
to do the last time we forgot to do.
Should we do one at a time? Or do you remember them all?
Okay, I'll start with the Fairy Tale of Brew York. So every year we bring out Fairy Tale of Brew York. It's always 4.9%. It's always a stout of some form. So this year it's a 4.9% milk stout. So a bit of lactose in there. And it's gingerbread!
And
I love gingerbread.
Yeah,
Gingerbread
really
milk stouts are
happy. A little bit of vanilla in there as well. But yeah, predominantly gingerbread. It's tasting really good. And then, as of last year, we then extended the series to include a Imperial strength stout and a sour. So the Imperial strength stout is called Nightmare of Brew York. And our tradition now is to take the previous year's Fairy Tale and to brew it to that double strength.
Amp it up.
So I know why you picked the one you did, because I've now got to do the one with the 5 ingredients. So Nightmare is the reincarnation of last year's, which has peanut, pecan, maple, vanilla, cinnamon. Boom.
Nice.
There we go.
So this is a really cool thing we did, or we decided to do, because now, or it's either cool or really bad, because now if you like Fairy Tale, amazing, you've got 3 years of enjoying it, because you'll get the Fairy Tale this year, next year you'll get the Nightmare, which will be the Imperial Fairy Tale, and the year after you get the Barrel Aged Nightmare, which is the 12-month Barrel Aged version, which is this year's 12-month Barrel Aged.
If you don't
beer.
like it, we just made 3 years of your nemesis.
Exactly. So this year's Barrel Aged Nightmare is last year's Nightmare, which was no idea. I can't remember.
And I remember this one because
it was your nana's.
Because this is based on. I used to go to my nana's on Christmas Day, Boxing Day, and she would always do this coffee ring, coffee and walnut ring, with cream on top. So we did 2 years ago the beer to be called a coffee and walnut milk stout. So the barrel aged variant is the coffee and walnut one.
So
And then finally, I don't know why you're finding that so funny. Just because I said the word ring, I'm guessing. But,
Yeah, pretty much.
and then the final one is Dreams of Brew York, which is always a 6.5% pastry stout. In line with the Christmas theme, we're keeping cranberry in there each time. Last year was blueberry and cranberry. This year, because you guys loved Kirsch Russell so much, we thought, well, cherry and cranberry. So we've got kind of the Kirsch Russell thing going on, but then the cranberry as well. We're really pleased with how the cranberries come through. The concern was the cranberry would get a little bit lost with the cherries, but the cranberry is definitely there, and it's got that kind of little dry finish that you expect when drinking cranberry as well.
So this is pretty cool. It's October and we're talking about Christmas, and everyone was just like giving us grief on social media, saying, "Oh my God, it's September. Why are you talking about Christmas?" So it's not an unfortunate thing. That's exactly what we have to do. We have to start the production process so early because, we'll put this beer available for sale, and you guys can buy it if you want to, and hopefully you've got an advent calendar. But in reality, wholesalers will buy it off us in October. They will stock their shelves. They'll do what they want to do. They'll start selling in November, because if you're a pub and you want a cask of Christmas beer or a keg of Christmas beer, you're buying it super early. You're buying it at the end of October to put on your bar in November to then serve until the start of December, and then you'll maybe order one or two more. For us, we don't sell much Christmas beer in December because people don't want to be stuck with a Christmas beer in January. So it all starts so early, and we learned this a few years back, and we started adapting our process to try and, especially when you're bringing out 4 Christmas beers, we started adapting our process a little bit early on, and we were like shaking our head at the same time. We were sitting in a planning meeting saying, yeah, let's get the Christmas beers into the schedule in September so they're ready and ready. It seems a bit counterintuitive, but that's what we have to do, which is why we want you guys to come and put your Christmas jumpers on and do some tastings with us in October, because the other thing we learned was last year we brought out our Christmas beers in a similar time, and we brought them out staggered because that's when we brewed them and they were ready to release. So we brought out Fairy Tale, we then brought out Nightmare, and then we brought out Dreams. So they launched, and we wanted to do a live tasting, so we saved it till December. And a lot of feedback from you guys at home was that the beers had already been out.
I drank that 2 months ago.
Yeah.
Why are you doing this
Why
now?
are you doing a live tasting in December of beer that we've already had 2 months ago? So we didn't want to do that again. So we will be bringing out fresh beers. So every month's box we won't have the Christmas beers in. We'll bring out fresher beers. We'll talk about those beers, but we do want to do a Christmas tasting, and we want to film it so that you guys can watch it when you guys want to watch it.
Yeah, that's the key thing, is that we have to film it around now because we supply into wholesale, etc. And as Wayne has just said, the real thing is watch it when you want. If you don't want to get Christmassy until the 24th of December, watch it then.
We won't force it down your neck, although we will keep talking about Christmas beers, unfortunately.
We've a lot of it to sell now. So.
Yeah.
Right. We're going to do a few more questions before we launch into a bit more about the beers that are coming soon. So next from Matthew, will you be releasing Empress Tonkoko this year? I have a can left from last year. So that for us, Matthew, is ordinarily a January release. So we brew it in January, we lay some down, barrel aged for the following year. So yeah, usually January. In fact, did we switch it to December last year?
No, we we might have done. Because of lockdown, we might have done. But we want to tease you people out of dry January and try and get you back on the Imperial Stouts. But yeah, we might have launched it at the end of December. I can't remember off the top of my head. So there's a question that says, are Christmas beers not in the subs box? So we just alluded to that then. No, they aren't going to be in the subs box this year. We did it last year, and because for us, you want them in the... Well, how would you guys feel if we put it in your October box, put 3 Christmas beers in your October box? It's a bit early, isn't it?
Well, that's almost 50% of your box that you're probably not going to drink there. You're going to put it in your fridge and leave it for a little while. If I were you, I'd feel a little bit hard done by.
So I don't know. You guys tell us. But we decided not to because we figured that you wouldn't want it this early. The beers are out. What we're trying to do more of now is if you guys, if we bring something out that's not in your box, we'll give you early access or a good discount on that beer instead. So that's our plan. So you'll get a better discount on the Christmas beers, like the Advent calendar. Speaking of the Advent calendar, we haven't mentioned anything about that yet, have we?
When you get the barrel aged version, can you get the barrel aged version?
So yeah, the barrel aged version is super rare. It's super exclusive. And the only way you'll be able to get that is if you buy an advent calendar. So the only reason for that is because we only laid 4 barrels last year. So that's only 800 litres of beer. By the time we package it, yeah. So by the time we package it, it's such a limited volume that we can only there's only going to be around 2,000 cans, which is about how many advent calendars we're going to have. So the only way you'll get access to barrel aged Nightmare is through an advent calendar. So it's a super rare beer.
Well, I'm open to bribes. Steve from Beer O'Clock Opinions that we discussed earlier that we did the Red Danson collab with has apparently signed out. Very rude, Steve. I'm disappointed with you there. But anyway, he's asked when is Imperial Big Eagle being released. I can't remember the exact release date, but it will be in your box next time. That's the main thing.
He's not even online to watch your answer, so...
Right, well, that was actually from Ian here up in Newcastle. Ian, it is now on you to relay that message to Steve.
So asked by the masses, will we produce a vegan sour? Yeah, well, we're bringing one out shortly, Twisted Transistor.
Well,
God, what a name.
no, corn, yeah. Yeah, well, it's a re-release actually. We've done that before. Whenever we do sour IPAs, they're always based on metal acts. So with the exception of one, we did Funk and Nancy at one point, but we've done Vulgar Display of Sour. What was the one we did with Box Social? The dark one.
Oh God, black IPA sour. Yeah.
Call it. There's one I want to make, which is called In My Darkest Sour. But unfortunately, dark and sour, we've already proven doesn't sell well. No. So I'm not sure we'll be doing that one anytime soon. I forgot what the actual question was.
Vegan friendly sour.
Oh, vegan. No, we have in the past. So one of my favourite sours of the past was like a Berliner Weiss style one, where we did, I mean, you didn't like it because we did it with lemongrass and tamarind. And you're not big on lemongrass, but I loved it.
The original Berliner Weiss we did, mine's got black.
But our new head brewer, Tom, is working on a recipe that you're going to get in the next 2 months or so. It's going to be a peach iced tea sour, and that will be vegan.
So any plans for an Imperial vegan Tonkoko? Well, Tonkoko's 8.5%. So
it's already 8.5. How big do you want us to go?
So yeah, you mean a plus 10%? Why not?
Well, Tonkoko, what had been scheduled for a release around this time of year, but then other things came along. We got behind on a few things. It kept getting bumped back. I don't think it's going to hit the calendar this year now, so we'll probably have to look for early next year to get that in. I don't know about a stronger one. I think we'll put the new one out there, the original one, and we'll see how it sells. If you guys love it, then maybe we'll look to do something stronger.
I like that you have that one.
It's like because you can't read it.
Oh, you go for it.
Years ago, a Yorkshire friend taught me, E by gum, by eck, E by thump. What's your favourite saying, Yorkshire or not? Okay. I don't know that. There you go. What's my favourite saying?
Yorkshire saying.
Cracking flags.
I don't know about sayings, but there's a particular phrase I like, and I think it was Mark Twain that said it. And you're all going to Google this now, and it's totally not going to be Mark Twain. But it was, the harder I worked, the luckier I got. And I think that's a very good mantra by which to live your life.
Yeah, 100%.
So I really like that one.
It's one of the things I always say all the time when people. We're very much hands-on people. We live Brew York. We're always working, and sometimes we don't appreciate how lucky we've got and how good things are for us because we're so heads into it. And sometimes when you take a step back, I always say to people, "Oh, we're lucky. We've done this. We're lucky." And there's a lot of luck in there, but it's also a lot of hard work. Hopefully. Well, not hopefully, it's true. Sal, my partner, and Polly, Lee's partner, are probably now at the beyond like we've pushed and pushed and pushed. We've worked and we've not spent enough time with those guys, and hopefully we'll be able to spend more time with them now that we've got to the stage we're at, and we've got great people who work for us who can help us and stop us being so obsessive about the business, because it's not luck. We've recruited great people to help us and to make sure that we don't need to be as hands-on as we used to be, and that's not lucky. That's us working hard to find the right people to help us do what we think is the right thing. And it's easy, and that's the way I always say we're lucky, and it's not lucky. We've just got great people around us.
I think as that statement was meant to mean, make your own luck.
Exactly, yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. Anyway, that got a bit deep.
12%. I think there's a question there that's like cats or dogs.
Hold on.
Dogs,
Right, we'll
obviously.
go with this one. Dogs or cats?
Well,
I know what your answer is.
obviously dogs. My 15-year-old miniature pincher cross, Jack Russell, had to go in for surgery yesterday, and quite intense. You don't want to ever put an animal that old into surgery, but yeah, £1,350 out of my pocket, and she's doing really well today.
Yeah. Not the first time you've mentioned that today. Yeah. That one, hasn't it?
But when a dog's that old, you don't really have insurance, unfortunately. So sorry, Sal, but we don't have a holiday this year.
Ooh. For me, cats or dogs? Yeah, definitely neither. The only pet, well, I've only ever wanted either a snake or a lizard. And my wife has told me that would probably lead to divorce. So you need to let me put a vivarium somewhere in one of our buildings.
Put it in your bloody backyard bar that you don't get to use anymore.
But she wouldn't go in there though. Oh, maybe that's a good thing. I did not. It's a matter of public record now. I absolutely did say that. Anyway.
But we're on the 12%ers, so she's probably tuned out by now because
She'll be hugely
you've
embarrassed.
dropped a few
by me.
F-bombs by now. So it's
What have you learned about the subs boxes over the last year? What went well, what didn't? Well, the experimental beers have had a really good launch.
It's a really good question because there's been such a huge learning curve for us. We didn't set out and intend to do a subscription box. We would in lockdown, and we realised that customers wanted us to put loads of fresh beer out to them and to make their life easier. And rather than go on our stupid, horrible website that's super slow and add 12 beers, it's just easier to have someone send you 12 beers. So we learned that our website needs to improve, and it's about to launch in the next 2 weeks. So it will be much better. So I'm sorry about how shit our website's been, but we did invest in it at the start of lockdown. It just wasn't really what we wanted it to be. So, yeah, the new website's really good.
I would say the biggest learning for me would be we didn't get it right from the get-go, because you weren't getting all of the new beers in the box, and it soon became very apparent that that's what you rightly should be expecting to. The reason you've subscribed is because you don't want to be in a queue, you don't want to deal with our website, you just want to get them dropping on your doorstep. So it took us maybe 2-3 months to realise that, but since that point, with the exception of a few things like the Christmas beers, which we've explained the reasoning why we can't quite do it that way, we've made sure that as much as we can of the new releases are dropping directly on your doorstep. So yeah, that was a big learning.
And the other bit we were hopefully about to implement in the next month or two is to give you guys a couple of options. So we want to try and appeal to everybody, but we also want to make a slightly cheaper box available if you only want, like, if a 12% stout isn't your bag, there's no point in us putting in your box because that genuinely bumps up the price of the box. So let's take those a couple of beers out that are the higher ABV, the higher price point. Let's make a more affordable option, and then let's make a more premium option where you get everything we can do. So like the super rare barrel aged beers, or there's some that's in super limited quantity. We'll make sure you can definitely have it in the box. But what we haven't been able to do, which we didn't realise, was the logistics of doing all this. So we are a very, very small team. So the web shop consists of one person, which is Josh. He basically makes it all work. And then when it comes to month end, when we're doing something like this, it's a mass, like we all try and
He puts
step
out
in.
a cry, I need help.
I need help, and we all jump in and we try and get all this working for the subs box. So when we try and add in the complications, so he's got to juggle. Some of you might have been here a member for 1 month, some might be 3 months, some might be 6, 12, 9. So he's got to juggle all the gifts and make sure that we package the boxes right. We do all this thing, and it sounds really simple when you're at home and you think, oh, I just want this, but it's really, really complicated, and all the things behind the scenes that go on that we hadn't factored in, but we do now, and we're getting better at it, and hopefully there's less mistakes going on. But we feel a bit more confident now that we can do all that and offer the couple of other options where you can get a premium or a less premium option and do these different things. So yeah, we've learned a lot over the last few months, but a few months.
Oh, we're definitely finishing on that question. Right. So this is the question I deferred earlier. So why is cask beer usually cheaper than keg? I have seen the same beer in one bar at different prices. So this is generally just market forces. For cask, there is a customer perception of what you should be paying for cask, and for whatever reason, it is tied
Sub
into
£4
ABV.
Usually.
So usually, yeah, it's going to be sub 4. You expect to pay a price, and it's driven by those, in my opinion, that operate at the bottom end of the market. So the likes of your Wetherspoons have decided that that's what you should pay for cask. And it is not a true reflection of the effort or the raw material that goes into the production of that beer. The Wetherspoons model originally started out as we will buy short-dated beer. We will buy beer from breweries where they've not been able to sell it elsewhere. It's only got a little bit of shelf life on it. We'll buy it in, we'll get it cheap, and then therefore we can sell it to our customers cheap. And they could do that because they knew they were going to turn it quickly in their bar. And then they got scale, and then they did the supermarket thing of going, well, we've got this buying power. If you want to sell into us, you're going to have to sell it into us cheaper than you do to anyone else. So people like them, and it's not only them, but they have driven down the price of cask in the UK. So now people have this expectation of a £1.29 pint of Ruddles. We've got more than £1.29 worth of ingredient in a beer. How they're then covering the tax and all the stuff
the duty
on that, I have no idea. So unfortunately for a lot of people, if you are cask only, it's ended up as a little bit of a race to the bottom. People are trying to outcompete each other on price in a non-sustainable way. These businesses will not be here tomorrow in the way that they're trying to compete on price.
It's also one of the most riskiest forms of beer to stock. So it hit us hard during lockdown, really did. So we were basically spreading our production pretty much equally between cask, can and keg. And what that meant was when lockdown hit, we were on 1/3 of our production was in cask, and we just got a new contract.
I was hoping for the first time ever I was going to go all the way through, but it's not going to happen.
We're on geeky numbers and stuff, so it's good chance for me to waffle. So yeah, so we had like a very, very high volume of cask beer on site, and the whole of the UK went into lockdown. No place to sell that beer, and cask beer has a super short shelf life. So if you've got a pale beer, it's typically 8 to 12 weeks, so 2 months to 3 months. Your pale beer will last. Dark beer lasts a little bit longer, so maybe 3 to 4 months. And then a couple of months into lockdown, we knew nothing was going to change. So we weren't going to get a chance to sell that cask beer. We were getting lots of pubs contacting us saying, we want to return the cask beer we bought off you because we can't sell it. And we were like, well, we can't sell it either. What are we going to do with all this beer? So we went into a mad dash of trying to package from a 9-gallon cask into a tiny little container so that people at home could drink it. And it was a super labour-intensive task to basically cover the cost of the beer. We weren't making any money whatsoever. We were just basically trying to recover the cost of that beer. And it was, I don't know, it was labour-intensive. It was a horrible process, but at least the beer didn't go down the drain. The best thing was you guys got to drink the beer and it wasn't wasted. And then all of a sudden the deadline hit, and then loads and loads of beer just went down the drain. And it was a horrible, horrible time for us as a brewery. So, it's not just the beer, it's not the cost ingredients, it's the time and effort of the team, it's all the stuff that we put into the beer because we're passionate about it, and it just goes down the drain. So, really horrible. And I just turned around at the time to Lee and I said, the time and effort we put into cask beer isn't reflected in the market value of the product. And because we were in lockdown, everyone wanted can. And then when things started opening up again, people wanted keg again, but no one was asking for cask beer because they knew how volatile it was themselves. So as a landlord, why would you buy a product that goes out of date, very, very short shelf life, when you could buy a keg beer that lasts a year? So we saw that most venues we were selling to weren't rushing back into cask beer. They were really, really cautious about it. But we have our own venues and we want cask beer because we love cask beer. It's a great, great product. It's one of the best ways of drinking the beer, and we didn't want to lose that. So we started brewing very, very small volume of cask again. And because we were brewing a small volume of it, we weren't going to sell it cheap. We weren't going to sell it to like your Wetherspoons or anyone who wants to pay the bottom market price for it. So we decided that at that point in time, cask beer is just as valuable, if not more, than any other form of selling beer. So people need to pay the price for it, unfortunately. And we weren't ever going to change the price we sell it for in our venues, but we weren't going to sell it cheap to wholesalers so they could sell it on cheap to other people. So we controlled the market for a while of our cask beer, and we didn't sell very much of it. But we weren't bothered about that. We were just glad to be selling cask beer. We weren't exposing ourselves. Obviously, another lockdown hit, and we got a bit excited before that, and we lost loads of cask again. So we learned, and then so cask beer is an amazing product, but don't take it for granted because it's it's such a short life.
And that story that Wayne's just outlined there is not unique to us. Many people got burned through the multiple lockdowns and had to put a lot of money down the drain. Consequently, they've all been a bit reticent, a bit reluctant to return to producing cask beer in large volumes. So you probably notice when you go into bars around whatever cities you live in, that you used to see maybe one or two, or maybe three or four, different cask options on the bar. And you're going in those certain places and you're seeing like one or two now. Mm-hmm. Because they just don't feel like they can be that bold anymore because they got burnt before.
Yeah. And they're not selling enough cask to justify it, yeah.
We haven't been kind of like launching ourselves fully back into that. We're probably there now. We're probably thinking this is about the right time to ramp up the production again.
Before we go into winter lockdown.
Yeah. But just to conclude on this, the whole UK market is warped in terms of its perception of what should be paid for cask beer. Take it from me as a brewer, the harder product to make, the product that should be more respected is cask beer.
Go drink cask beer in any other country.
It's the thing that should be considered to be premium. There is real skill in the production of it, and for your barman, there is incredible skill required to be able to store it, to tap it, to allow it to do what it needs to do before it can be served, to then serve it. There's a lot of skill involved in that. Whereas keg beer, we just ferment it to the end, we pop some bubbles in it, it goes in a keg. I'm being really like layman here. And for the barman to serve it is couple it up, go like that, done. They don't have to think. But for cask beer, there is skill to its production. There is also real skill to its dispense. But we totally disregard that in the UK, and we consider it to be the inferior product with our pricing. Thankfully, in the rest of the world, America is wise to this. It's the premium product. You go to the US, you're going to pay more for a cask beer than you're going to pay for a keg beer. The likes of Italy are now really getting into like the cask game. And you're going to pay more there than you're going to pay for the keg game. And that's the way it should be. Usually the thing that requires more effort is going to cost you more. But unfortunately in the UK, there's perhaps too many people willing to race to the bottom and like drive the prices down.
So on that big debate and argument, we're going to draw tonight's session in. We're going to cut the live feed, but if you want any more questions...
I've got one last question.
Go on then, go for the last question.
We've got to go with this question. Do you think you could fight 4 swans?
What?
No. Do you think you could fight 4 swans? I love the fact it's not 1 swan.
Two of us.
You might have a chance against 3.
What are you saying?
I know.
Do you think you can fight 4 swans?
Well, the 2 of us, because 1 neck each.
Oh, we've got the big guns. Oh, big
No. I think it may...
So thank you for joining us tonight.
Nadia,
We haven't
before
waffled as much as we
Nadia,
normally
before
do.
you
which
cut,
is
I
good.
need to do my usual bit. If you've enjoyed this, if you've not enjoyed it, please get your feedback in. Get it through to info@brewyork.co.uk.
Nadia
And
at
we will
brewyork.co.uk.
see you next time. Thank you. Yeah.
Because we will answer these questions.